justice for all.
All right, thank you. And we'll take a brief reflective moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. I'm going to ask for a motion to amend tonight's agenda. We did move during the special meeting to continue the selection of the Board of Trustees seat vacancy to the meeting. And I did want to just explain a little bit about the process. During the break, the trustees each wrote down their top 3 choices in rank order and gave those to staff. And staff will present those back during the discussion, and we can kind of see where everybody is. And we'll continue to do it that way as many times as needed to get to a consensus. So we want to try to do this in as kind of a, I don't know, respectful way as possible, if I can say that. So I would appreciate a motion to amend tonight's agenda.
I move to approve tonight's agenda with the following amendment to add as number 1 under general business, Board of Trustees vacancy, selection of candidate as replacement, and then adjust the remaining numbers as appropriate.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the votes. I'm sorry. Trustee Miller. Okay, the agenda is approved, 6-0. Thank you. All right, we don't have a sheriff for tonight's meeting. Is there a report?
I do have a few things to report. Sergeant Christ is on vacation, so I do have a few items from the weekend that I want to just bring up. One is that we did have a water rescue this weekend. People that were tubing and went upside down under one of the higher currents, and they were fine, but they ended up again on the other side of the bank, which is common. So we did have to have a full water rescue to get them back over to this side and taken care of. So I believe I will call, if everyone is okay with that, I'll give Sheriff Pelley a call tomorrow and ask what they traditionally do during spring runoff is put in a tubing ban until the water is back around 400 cubic feet per second. So he usually makes that call, but it's probably not until people locally are starting to say this is getting a little too high. So if you're okay with that, I'd like to reach out to him tomorrow. Second was we did have several noise complaints about music at Lion's Den. So we will reach out directly to those owners and let them know that there was several complaints about the noise, as well as work with the Sheriff's Department to make sure that they understand they have the authority upon complaint to request the music be turned down. But it is my understanding that it did end by 10 o'clock, so that was a good thing. So those are the 2 things I had. We made it through the weekend over at Laverne Johnson with minimal or no graffiti that I know of, so that's awesome. There is some at Sandstone, and we'll get that taken care of as soon as possible. But those are the only things I know about over the past few days.
Do we have any leads on who the graffiti artists are?
Just some, we do have, I should say indirectly, just other folks that said they saw someone's children doing that. So there is a lead, yes.
Okay. Anything else on the sheriff's report? Trustee Miller?
I actually got a product for you.
Okay.
It's called Graffiti Off. That I got specifically for the for the town. So
we have graffiti. Some of our surfaces we put an extra surface on when we rebuilt the parks to make it come off easier. But in this case, it was charcoal in wood grooves, and and it just has stained the grooves
Right.
like that now. So, but we're happy to take
Yeah,
any recommendations
it's all
you
yours.
have. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Can move on to staff reports.
Okay, the first item on staff report is the finance report, and Finance Director Jill is going to present that tonight.
Thank you. I'll run that over when I go back to put it back up. Would you guys dim the lights just for me? Makes it easier to see.
It's the first one towards you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it worked a minute ago.
I think it was turned, there you go.
There it goes. Okay, can you guys all see? Okay. So I'm back again this month to do the May financial reports. And we'll just get started. So for May, we actually had revenues of 9,700, let's try it again, $978,596. Most of that money went into the electric fund, and as we kind of go through the charts, I'll show you why. We also had $791,128 in expenditures. And again, most of this is in the electric fund. So we actually recorded the bond refunding in May. So when we did that, we got money from the bond refunding, which showed up as revenue. In that, we got $447,000. And then we paid off our 2003 bonds in the amount of $500,000. So there's your expenditure. That's why those are so high in those funds. So that's the expenditures. So when we look at just revenue and expenditures for the month, we're actually doing pretty good. Revenues are higher than expenditures for all of the funds. So that's amazing. It's a good thing. Okay, then we're going to look at revenues and expenditures year to date. So when we look at, I think that this gives you a better picture to look at things year to date versus just the month. So as we look at this one, we do see that the water and sanitation fund are still, the expenditures are higher than the revenues. So at the end of May, all the revenues for the funds were higher than expenditures with the exception of the water and sanitation and the parks and rec fund. Some of the high expenditures were due again to, I don't have the right slide. It's going to be the bond. So the bond payments, the debt service payments are why the water and sanitation fund are higher. Okay. So when we look at year-to-date revenues compared to budget, when we see, again, this is a new slide for you guys. You haven't seen this before. So when we look at our budget, we anticipate some higher expenditures or some higher revenues or lower revenues, depending on what we're looking at throughout the year. So I think this gives you a pretty good idea of year-to-date where we're at compared to the budget. So when we look at the budget, we don't look at it as differences throughout the year. We look at it just a straight amount each month for X amount of months. So just so you're aware of that. So when we look at the general fund, we're pretty close to where we should be, or where we anticipated we should be. The electric fund, the revenues are higher due to the bond proceeds. The water fund is low, and the sanitation fund is low, and that's going to be due to, we have some tap fees which are budgeted for the affordable housing. We won't see those until probably August. So those will continue to stay pretty low until we get those tap fees in, and then you'll see that pop back up. The stormwater fund is right where it should be. The Parks and Rec fund is a little bit low on revenues just because we're not quite into the summer season where we'll see that pop up a little bit better. Okay, when we look at expenditures, again, we're looking at it compared to budget. In the general fund, we're actually pretty far below budget where we anticipated being. The electric fund is going to be high, again, due to the expenditure for the bond refunding. The water fund is right where it should be, sanitation fund is right where it should be, stormwater fund is a little low, and Parks and Rec is a little low as far as expenditures go. Okay, and then one other view I wanted to show you guys is usually when we're looking at expenditures and revenues, they're pretty consistent from year to year. So a good way to compare things as well is to look at them from year to year, year to date. So what this chart is showing you is revenues which are 2019 through May compared to 2018 through May, and just see where we're at there. So again, the general fund is pretty close, it's at 95%. The electric fund, again, we did that refunding, so that's there. The water fund and sanitation fund, again, they're fairly close. Stormwater fund, we're actually getting more revenues for that one. And the Parks and Rec fund is pretty close as well. So it's just a good way to kind of gauge where we're at. And I looked at it again on the expenditure side, year-to-date 2019 versus year-to-date 2018. Again, general fund's pretty good. Electric fund, there's the refunding again. The water fund and sanitation fund, they're kind of opposite. We actually had a debt service payment that was made in 2018 and booked into the wrong fund. So you see that in the water fund being too high when it should have been in the sanitation fund. So it was corrected in July, so you'll see those kind of level back out as we get a little bit further into the year. The stormwater fund, there was no expenditures in 2018, so that's 100% higher. And then the Parks and Rec fund is fairly close. Okay. So these are just looking at it by the quarter. So again, first quarter we've already looked at. Second quarter, so this is going to be 2 months into the second quarter. For the general fund, again, our revenues are still exceeding our expenses. And for the first quarter, there's plenty of revenue there as well. For the electric fund, again, we're looking at our expenses being higher, but our revenues in the first quarter are exceeding our expenses. So we should be pretty well covered for that one. On the water fund, our expenses in the first quarter were much higher due to debt service. So again, as we get through the year, that'll kind of level back out to where it's supposed to be. The sanitation fund, it's budgeted to be higher expenses than revenues. So, and we're seeing that consistent through each quarter. And Parks and Rec fund, again, as we get further into the summer, we'll see that revenue pop back up a little bit more. Also, we had some expenses for the outdoor games, which we don't have the revenue in yet, so we'll see that kind of get a little bit higher there. We wanted to look at sales tax revenues. We talked about that a little bit last meeting. I thought that this chart might be a little bit easier to see it. So if you look at April, which is what we're looking at sales tax revenue for right now, if you look at this chart, 2016 is really low, but everything else is right in the same spot. I mean, it's almost the same dot. So we're right on track to where we have been in the past. Okay, you guys had also asked me about the occupancy and lodging tax. Or actually, it's not a tax, it's a fee. We'll correct that. And these are pretty much all we're showing in this category at this point is like VRBO or like vacation rental nights. So these are actually pretty flat at this point. When I put the budget in for this, I actually did make it like a bell curve because you would expect us to have more revenue coming in the summer months than you would on the winter and fall months. So I did put that in this way, so as we kind of look at this through the year, you'll see it kind of pop up and then come back down, but at this point, the revenues are fairly flat. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is the sanitation service charges. So we've been talking about the sanitation fund and how it has been lagging a little bit as far as the revenues go. When you look at this chart, I'm comparing 2018 to 2019. So the blue bars in the front are 2018, the orange bars in the back are 2019. So for May, our revenues just for service fees is 31% higher this year than it was the prior year at this point in time. So the rate increases account for $52,390 year to date. That's pretty impressive. In addition to that, starting with the April billing in 2019, we did the BOD service charge, or surcharge, It's generated an additional $9,569 over 2 months, so it averages about $4,700 a month. Commercial customers are paying 95% of that BOD surcharge. Okay? And that's all I've got. Do you guys have any questions? I did much better this time, huh?
Questions? Trustee Browning?
Yeah, I had a question about the occupancy fee. I guess there's really three kind of like multi-room facilities in town. There's the Festivarian Inn, Alpine Hotel, and Wicasa. Are all those collections from that group of businesses coming in regularly, and we're getting reports? And because I would think, other than the summer camping stuff, which is a different question, that's probably most of what we would collect so far.
It would be, remember, it's vacation rental, so it'd be
Right.
something under 30 days. So if you have somebody like a motel that's got long-term people in there, we wouldn't collect anything from them.
Okay. But all of those entities are, that group as a whole is reporting monthly and, okay.
They are.
Do you know how many businesses are contributing to the BOD surcharge, total businesses?
I don't know the quantity. I could get that for you, though.
Yeah, I'd be curious how many are paying the surcharge compared to the total number of businesses in town.
Okay. I will find that out for you.
Any other questions for staff on the financials? Mayor Pro Tem?
It's actually just a comment. I wanted to thank you for a really nice presentation, very understandable, very clear, and very good explanations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just one final question on the audit. Do we have a date yet for when the 2018 audit will be presented to the board?
I don't have a date when it will be presented. The auditors are here today. They started here
okay.
today. They'll be here for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So we are anticipating on publishing on time. So it will be probably June, July, somewhere in there.
Okay, so no extension this year?
The July 15th workshop?
Well, we can use it for the audit. I mean, I would think the audit would take precedence probably, so, but we can decide. Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Trustee Farrell.
Sounds great.
Is there any chance you can forward that, the presentation to us, just because, so I could take some more time in looking at it in more detail?
And actually, I did that earlier today, so you should have that in your email.
Oh.
I sent it to BOT.
I didn't see it.
I'm looking at it now and I don't see it, but that
Okay.
could be a me issue.
Okay, let me send it again, just
Thank
to make
you.
sure you guys get it.
That'd be great, thanks.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for the finance director? Okay, thank you so much.
You are
Good luck
welcome.
with the audit.
Thank you.
All right, I'll turn it over for the staff report, administrator report.
Yes, actually several things. First of all,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. I do want to pass on the unfortunate news that Jim Blankenship has passed. For those who worked with Jim, he has been our town on-call engineer since 2002. And he's been fighting a hard battle with melanoma. And so I just really want to take this opportunity to, I did get to talk with Jim before he passed this weekend and thank him especially for his contributions, not only to the city over the last 17 years, but especially following the flood. I don't know if everyone realized how critical and crucial he was actually to our immediate response. And he is the one who designed all the temporary improvements for water and sewer so people could come home, as well as working on our behalf on flood ordinances and rebuilding the permanent infrastructure during a time of chaos and crisis. He really loved lions and is leaving behind his wife and 3 boys. So I just want to let people know that. So I don't know service details yet, but we'll keep people in touch who may want to participate in that. So We will be bringing forward a contract for our new on-call engineer on July 1st. Okay, so in the meantime, we'll continue to use Charles Abbott Associates during this transition. Okay? One second. I'm sorry, I got off on the wrong thing here. In other administrative news, we did have a really significant meeting with CDOT regarding the Greens proposal on the Eastern Corridor. CDOT actually sent 4 people for about 2.5 hours to discuss what they see as the future of the roadway just east of Junction 3666. And they feel that it can be compatible to some of the proposed uses that the Greens originally identified. However, there will be some limited movement. They do anticipate there could be a signal at the east end of Highland Drive, and there's currently one at the west end of Highland Drive, which is the junction. But probably not anything in between. The other thing they talked about, other than like 3/4 movements, not a full signal, they also left us with a map of what they would like to see as access closures over the next 20 or 30 years to try to keep traffic moving more safely and to remove the amount of stop and go in between those stoplights. So that may come as a surprise to some businesses along that stretch, and they had some interesting suggestions of how to improve it near the Circle K corner, including even the potential of asking if they can use part of our railroad right-of-way as a back frontage road. So some pretty creative ideas. But it was a very productive meeting, and I think it really helped Mr. Tamburello and his team kind of firm up some of their design plans out there. So also, I want to thank Trustee Drysdale for attending several urban renewal meetings with the county, the library, and the fire district on Friday. And then I met with the school district at their board meeting on June 12th. And so we will not be having an Urban Renewal Authority meeting this month. Instead, we're going to wait until July 25th in the hopes of being able to bring 4 IGA agreements back to the authority to enter into so we can move forward with some tax increment financing.
Did you say July 25th?
I believe so, yes. Yep. You may recall that the state sent a monitor to come and look at our FEMA closeouts. Joe Barrios was her name. She was here for the entire week, and she responded that we'll be getting a written report probably within 2 weeks, but she was very, very pleasantly surprised with the amount of just improvement in documentation and in contracting and procurement since her last visit. She thought it was really beneficial to be here and talk with staff so that she can explain some of the intricacies to FEMA. She again reiterated that our grouping of the pilot program and especially Second Avenue Bridge, which is a very complex mitigation project, would probably take years for them to close out if there isn't someone there who understands what happened 5 and 6 years ago. So she was going to go back to the state with some pretty strong recommendations, and hopefully within the next 2 weeks we'll hear that we're moving forward probably about 8 projects into closeout, which means we'll get final reimbursement on several projects. So we had a great visit with her. We also had the Evans Street neighborhood meeting. We had about 10 residents from that area, not everyone, but a nice amount. We also had a traffic engineer and the civil engineer here to talk about the idea of the cul-de-sac. And then if you recall, the board had said, let's look at a one-way, north to east. And then we also just looked at what will happen if we would just curb and gutter and pave and put signage and maybe change the speed limit. The entire group went back and forth. There were people there that wanted all three options. And it was and they as a group decided they could live with the cul-de-sac. They do not want speed bumps. And they actually think the dip that's there for storm drainage acts as somewhat of that. But we had left the meeting knowing that we still needed to talk to the sheriff, fire, and public works. Sheriff, fire, and public works are not thrilled with the idea of the cul-de-sac at all. And so what we would like to recommend as moving forward would be to this year do the portion that's paid for by the two grants, which is the paving, the curb, and the gutter, so that people will be narrowing it, and see what that does to the traffic flow in that area. And if the board would like to budget, remember the cul-de-sac and eyebrow were on the town budget, and those are not in this year's budget. So if we could do the minimal first, see how that works for folks, and then budget for the other two for 2020, if we decide to move forward with that. Police and fire, our sheriff and fire, their biggest concern is on the south side of Main Street. If Main Street is completely backed up, and we then have an accident or a critical event on Railroad Avenue between Sandstone and Senior Center, that is the only through street to send people to the west. And so they are very hesitant to say they want to constrict that further in the event of an emergency. And I think it's very legitimate. So we would like to move forward with a portion that is funded by FEMA and CDBG-DR. And because about 3 or 4 people in the room wanted that option anyway, go with that and then budget for the other. And if they feel they need it, then consider it more next year.
So the majority wanted the cul-de-sac,
No, not the majority.
not the majority. So
But they were able, they ended up at a consensus that they could all live with it.
oh. Okay.
The one-way option, no one supported, and including fire and police.
All right, so I'm just a little bit confused, though, because I thought the cul-de-sac was actually part of the whole recovery project design.
No, the cul-de-sac would not be paid for with either of those funds. It did not exist prior to, and it doesn't meet the turnaround standards. And so, no, it would not meet the current codes and standards for a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Also, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, but have had it formalized, that FEMA headquarters would like to use the town of Lyons as a formal case study for their permanent records. And they would like to send 2 staff in August to come and start interviewing residents, elected officials, business owners, a whole group of people to put together a formal case study of lessons learned, what happened here, what should have been done differently, those sorts of things. So they are booked, I don't have the calendar here, but I think it's August 5th, the week of the 15th. They'll be here for pretty much the whole week. So we'll get more information out there, but they do want to hear from us on who they should be talking to in different categories. And they're very interested in using us as a case study on how we were able to manage to do our recovery action plan in the midst of the immediate recovery. They're interested in that part too. So they will be here in August. And other than that, I have a couple updates that I just need to touch base with the board on. If you recall, we had a resident that was being required to put in a backflow prevention device in their home. They did conduct that, they did install a backflow prevention device, but unfortunately, it was not done, the testing on that device was not done, nor was it a permitted installment. They didn't come in and get a permit, and the wrong device was installed. So we are working with that person to try to get it corrected again, and it may involve having to turn the water off temporarily while that occurs. We have been notified by the state that the town of Lyons permit is in danger if we do not require this. So we will be moving forward with some work there. And also, there is a local business that is being required to install a backflow preventer who is also choosing not to do that. And we may have to shut off the water to that restaurant in the meantime. The documentation on that one goes back a full year of trying to work with them on, they went into a building that is 30-plus years old, maybe even 40, that has sprinkler chemical in the sprinkler system, that the state requires have a backflow preventer so it doesn't contaminate the public water system. And we did talk with this business about the revolving loan fund, about our mandate from the state, and unfortunately, they're not responding now to any of our communications. So we are working with that business as well. So I just want to let the board know we are reaching out and trying to keep really good documentation, but when the state gets involved with our permit as a water system, it kind of is the end of the road for us to have to take a worst-case action. So, sorry about that, but...
Town attorney, comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Sullivan. I just want to follow up a little bit on the legal ramifications of kind of what's happening here with these backflow prevention issues. So since the 1960s, the state has required that all cross connections basically be controlled within the state of Colorado as a one element of the permit for public water systems. It's also part of the Safe Water Drinking Act requirements under the federal act. And basically the way the state law is set up is through CDPHE's regulations, and specifically it's 1139 if we want to look it up. We have 120 days once we learn of a cross connection to either require the resident to fix the cross connection, either go in and do it ourselves, fix the cross connection, or shut off their water. And so for both of these instances, we have reached that point. Any delay past 120-day timeline does put the town's Safe Water Drinking Act permit at risk from the state because we are willfully at that point permitting a cross connection on the public water system. And so that's kind of the challenge we're up against in trying to work with these individuals is also complying with the town's water permit as a whole. And you can kind of see that the relevancy to fixing this issue as quickly as possible because of that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for me?
No. Trustee Farrell, go ahead.
I'm really curious to get more information about the CDOT workshop or program meeting that you did. Is there any way that we can get more insight into that? I'd really like to understand that more so I can start thinking long term of what that visually looks like.
The CDOT is conducting right now what's called the PEL, preliminary engineering, what's the L? I can't remember. Preliminary engineering.
Can't remember either.
I know, I either. From all the way from Platteville to Lyons, so it's all of Highway 66. So there is a meeting of that group about every 2 weeks to talk about different sections. And so we have had the engineer attend on occasion, and the town planner has attended on behalf of Lyons. So it's a pretty complex project, subject to change until this gets adopted. And I'm more than happy to, if we want to schedule, a half hour at a workshop or something to go through my understanding or invite them back. But it is somewhat their expectation that we're attending their meetings, since it is this year-long kind of comprehensive planning effort for the whole corridor. But I'm happy to, however I can best communicate that. It is pretty complex.
Yeah, if anybody wants to attend those, they're like
They're-
at 7 a.m. on Friday mornings, usually like somewhere out in Meade,
Yeah,
really falling
Or
apart.
Platteville or
They're,
Longmont.
and the focus has mostly been on some of the
East.
big sections way out east, but eventually whatever happens east ends up impacting Lyons. I had a question about whether you had any conversation with them about the intersection at Highway 7 and 36 and doing any kind of study around that section particularly. And
out Main Street.
yeah,
We did, and we showed them some renderings. The group that was here, though, is only working on the 66 portion, so it starts at the intersection and goes east. However, it really piqued their interest, and they did ask Paul to send them the traffic analysis that came up with that. So we will do that, but we'll get it to the right person. He was not at the table with us that day.
yeah, I'm actually really glad to hear you had a meeting. I think CDOT is just an entity we have to put more investment in terms of relationships. I mean, all the transportation dollars are really being targeted to CDOT and then Dr. Cog secondarily. But I think that's the place we're going to be looking for
It was
any
a really
improvements
productive
down the
meeting.
road. Good. Trustee Farrell, did you have follow-up?
Well, my follow-up then is though really expressing concern about the accidents and the example that we had where we had somebody airlifted right out of an area that's been difficult for every year. And so I'm just curious about the expression of those kinds of conversations being given to them and their receptiveness of understanding the seriousness of danger that we're experiencing here in town.
Yes. There, as you guys know, there's a series of thresholds or warrants that must be met to slow speed or to change signage or the shape of the road. In the case of that whole section between the junction and Stone Canyon and McConnell Drive, the response to that is to close those access points that are creating people from pulling out and stopping quickly and turning left and turning right, all at not at an intersection. And so that's where that access map comes in. But it would have a significant impact on businesses and the ability to get in and out of those businesses. So from their perspective, they are very supportive of controlling that whole stretch. It's just, how do you do that without honestly impacting a business, the traffic from getting to that business? And so the access plan, they said, is a 20, 30-year plan that as businesses change ownership or change use, then they can mandate a change in access. The other thing they said we needed to do is prepare a letter from the mayor requesting that our speed study start on the signaled intersection at McConnell Stone Canyon. And so we are prepping that for the mayor to sign. They had said 9 to 12 months after it was installed, and they had data that they would consider a speed change through that section. So we're prepping to send that.
So then I would like to request that, and I can follow up with an email, that we consider doing some kind of a workshop so that we can all better understand all of those elements, because, I mean, it's not just one piece at a time.
No,
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. Anything else?
no.
All right. Outdoor games update?
Oh, I can keep all of this.
Yes.
Okay.
For you. Thank you. Sure.
Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'm.
Is that the one that's not working? Do we need to switch out the mic?
I am Josh Kravitz. I'm the president of Adventure Fit. We're the company that produced the Burning Can Fest at the Lions Outdoor Games, and this was our third year producing the event for the town of Lyons and for Oscar Blues. The event was fantastic. It went really, really well. It was the best and biggest yet. We had almost 5,000 people there. It's very important for this event to be an important event for the community, as well as to generate revenue and to showcase the town. And I'm happy to report that we increased revenue by over $20,000. We came in under budget by $7,500. And then we also addressed the concerns of last year, some of which were adding events for all ages, as well as creating more shade and allowing vendors more accessibility to all of the attendees. So we had people from 33 different states, and on the report, it kind of shows where a lot of these folks came from as well locally. The attendee geography on the first page of the report shows where credit card transactions occurred. So there were 915 credit card transactions from people that lived in 80540. So that's a lot of people from Lyons that came to attend. So obviously a very important event for the community. We added an event called Rad Track, which is a bicycle obstacle event that was for all ages, which was really popular. We had the beer relay running event. We had a great concert with 3 bands, actually one in the beer festival, so 4 bands. And the beer festival, of course, is one of the main events, which was very successful with 68 breweries attending. Let's see. Increased exposure for the event, so we increased our marketing budget this year, and that resulted in 861 impressions. So everywhere that the event is listed, the town of Lyons is as well. So, one of our main goals is to showcase how the town of Lyons is a great event for outdoor lifestyle. And certainly with the Burning Can Beer Fest, it's made a name for itself within the Colorado beer community, which is a huge asset within the state, because obviously it's a very, very competitive state for craft beer, and with Oscar Blues being from here, obviously it's kind of a destination location. Let's see here. Also in the report we have some sponsors. We brought in some large national sponsors like Jack Links, Ball Corporation, Yakima, Otterbox. Also had a lot of local support too. Laura Levy was a great supporter. The Bud Depot, Green Goo, and a lot of other vendors. We had close to 60 vendors this year, so that was a significant improvement from previous years. As far as marketing, one of the things that we wanted to really focus on is telling the story of the event. So we had a PR consultant create 4 different press strategies to reach families, fans of bikes, fans of beer, and fans of running, and then created separate press releases to target all of those different groups. And as a result, we got a lot of great editorial coverage. I did a quick report, the second packet I gave you, which has the survey highlights. It basically equates the amount of earned media. So the articles that were written about the event, if we were to pay for those, that would be over $26,000 in paid ads. So there was a lot of great photos and stories written about the event in local and national media. And let's see. Some of the best articles were 9 News, Westward did some great coverage, and then the Daily Camera and Times Call had a big article with photos and highlighted all of the different elements of the festival. And one of the very important things to look at for this event is how to measure people's response. And these days, with the millennial market being one of the most popular, largest demographics for this, we look to Instagram to see where what people have to say about this event. And following the event, there were 2,700 posts mentioning Burning Can and Lions Outdoor Games, which showcased people having fun, everything from dogs to families to people riding bikes, people enjoying beer, hanging out in hammocks, camping. Very much the overall concept of the festival was recognized through Instagram, and those photos are really, I think, what makes a difference long term. Looking at the survey highlights, the majority of the people that were at the festival traveled between 30 and 60 miles, so definitely are attracting people from out of town to come in. And the largest segment of the audience was between 22 and 29, followed very closely by 30 and 39. So that is the millennial audience, which is a very elusive group to try to attract, and we've been able to do that with this festival, which is great. They also were able to choose why they came to the festival. 37.6% came to watch the Lions Outdoor Games, 84% for the beer festival, 57% for the concert, so the music was a very important element. And then I was happy to see that 33% also came to support the town of Lyons, so that was really cool too. Of the overall satisfaction, 94% were very satisfied or satisfied with the event, and 95% also are likely to come back. 23% of the audience had not come to Lyons before, and following the event, 75.7% plan to attend. So if we look at how this equates to the financial gain, not just from the revenue generated from the event, we should look at how much people spent while they were in Lyons. So if we broke it down to ranges from under $20, $20 to $50, $50 to $100, and then over $100. So based on these ratios, we estimate that while people are in Lyons, they spent $195,000 at local businesses. And then for the folks that are likely to come back again, if they only spent $20 each, this would result in another $91,000 from a single visit. So obviously the event has a long-term goal of showcasing people, showcasing the town to people so they can come back and enjoy everything that the town has to offer. And we definitely want to create those return visits. Also had a lot of campers, and people really enjoy their camping experience too. So we're trying to create this to be a destination event, not only for people in Colorado, but from all over the country. And with people coming from 33 different states, we're on our way. So financially, this was an event split by Oscar Blues and the town of Lyons. Oscar Blues actually contributed a bit more to have a larger music budget. And the production budget that we were provided, the half from the town of Lyons, was $75,000, and it generated, coming back to the town, $71,300. So slightly short of the $75,000 amount, but very close. And I think if you are looking at the amount of sales tax revenue generated from the vendors as well as from all the people that were at the festival, I think it comes out to a very positive number.
Where's that number listed in this paperwork?
The finances, did you share that with them?
No,
Okay. I didn't include that in that, but I can share the whole spreadsheet with all the details on that.
that'd be great.
Certainly.
What was Oscar Blues' return?
They paid $25,000 more than the town of Lyons.
Right, but what was their return on that?
So it would be, I guess, about 25 or no, about $50,000.
Okay.
So tonight's discussion was more of an update, and if the board wants to spend time on this tonight, we can, or we can schedule it during the budgeting or another workshop, another board item.
Yeah, if there are questions, you could ask questions tonight. I guess my only question was, what do you think the impact was from losing the kayaking?
Well, I think obviously it's a heritage event that we like to see. As far as overall attendance, I don't think it had a major effect. I think people understood that there wasn't enough water, and the whitewater community had to cancel the event because of that. But we had 3 events lined up to do, including a new event, which is a river rat race. But unfortunately, there just wasn't any water flow for those events to occur.
Any other questions? Trustee Browning?
You mentioned in here somewhere that change in the parking plans for next year. If the park is done and open everything, how do you anticipate that changing next year?
Well, we've got a lot of amazing opportunities there. There's a skate park, so there can be a skate competition. All of the parking could be consolidated into one location, which is a huge asset because we had to work with 3 different parking lots, people parking in the residences. So this way we can route everybody into one location. So definitely maximize parking revenue. And then also, the park layout itself could really help facilitate an overall flow of the event with additional elements to the program. Like I mentioned, there's skateboarding or a bike park type activity. There's also potential access over to the creek on the phase 1 side of the park, which we weren't really able to access because everything was pushed back to the dog park.
When you say one location for parking, what do you mean? Just the 2 upfront lots, or park in the dog park? Or
well, from my understanding, the initial plan for this, including the 2-lane Crusher Fine Road, was to have all the parking in the dog park, so that can accommodate everybody. Or there's other, the sports fields and the front could help accommodate all those groups too. I guess it really depends on how we want to lay things out, but one way or the other, we can have one location for all the parking.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Trustee Farrell.
Actually hadn't touched it
Oh,
yet,
sorry.
so no, that was okay. I'm just curious, how was the survey administered, and how was that measured and getting the responses?
That was sent to all of the attendees that purchased tickets
Okay.
online. So if they purchased tickets at the door, it did not measure them because that's a process we want to do very quickly, so we don't collect a lot of information from them. So these were all the people that purchased tickets ahead of time, and we incentivized them with free VIP tickets to take the survey
So that would be VIP tickets next year?
for next year.
Okay, and how many respondents were there?
I think we had, about 300, just under
Okay.
300. It's through Constant Contact.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. How many of you guys attended the festival?
My kids did.
Your
I
kids
wasn't
did?
able, I was out of town, unfortunately.
Cool. Nice. Well, it was great. Too bad you guys missed it, but yeah, luckily we definitely scored with weather too. It was absolutely perfect, so.
Yeah, it was a nice day.
Yeah,
All right, thank you so much.
sure.
All right, parks
Parks.
update.
Sure. Let me transition to the parks update. So I have a small update for you, and I'm going to give you a couple maps too, because I don't know if you've seen these. But what we give out, let me get up and do it. For everybody who comes to Laverne Johnson or to Bone Park with our gate attendants on the weekend, we give them a map of the facility. It also has the rules on the back so that they can be aware of some of the rules we have. Somebody's gonna have to share the window.
We can share. It's okay. Oh, that's okay.
So some of the changes this year to the park is we have 2 hosts now at Laverne Johnson Park. We have our host who's been there since September, and then we have Tanya and Nate who are in where the 2 sites that had no hookups, they're over there. And so then we also have our hosts at Bone Park, and our hosts there are in their 2nd year. We have, as I mentioned earlier, attendance at both parks on weekends, and a lot of that is just to give folks who are coming information on the rules of, there's no alcohol, no smoking, no outside gas grills, and also to let them know about parking. And so I think the other piece that's been really important so far from our perspective is the agreement with Trident. They give us a log, and I'm happy to share it with anybody. I'm on the board if you'd like, where they note, they contacted somebody who had alcohol. They contacted them, complied. Somebody was in an area they shouldn't be in, or sometimes they get onto private property that's not park property. And I think the other piece to that, it's then allowed the hosts to be more ambassadors and more positive of where you go for help. And also, the rules seem to be followed better so far. Now, granted, we've had a wet spring. Sunday was probably the busiest day we've had in the park, and I wrote that down too, is the revenue. Compliance is going up greatly, I think, again, because you're seeing, one, attendance at both parks, two, with the Trident folks there. And so year-to-date, we've collected $20,400 in parking. 1,400 of that is at Bone. So Bone hasn't picked up as much, but on Sunday, for example, when it filled up, we were directing folks to go over to Bone, and our hosts at Bone are so funny. They're like, tell them to come here. We love having people, so they've been talking to people. So far, that part is going well. A lot of the revenue, in fact, Victoria and I talked about that today, from the parking helps pay for the extra attendance on weekends, the extra cleaning that we have on weekends, and then also this agreement with Trident providing the protection. And then it'll also allows the camping to, function as a little revenue source over there. And camping right now, this is the second year we've had the online system. It's really going well. We probably have about 90% occupancy in the RV part as of right now for the summer. You can barely get 2 nights together until August right now, like stringing together. Like tonight, somebody wanted a Monday and Tuesday, and we didn't have it. And tent camping is probably at about 50% occupancy now too. So, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to
Trustee
answer
Farrell.
them.
I was curious about what kind of attendance numbers are you seeing at Laverne and Johnson compared to Bone? Is it still skewed
It is.
significantly? And are we experiencing this year the same trash issues?
Not yet. So there's a couple of things. Honestly, Sunday was probably it was the busiest day when the parking filled up for the first time this summer at Laverne Johnson. The trash was reasonable there, all things considered, but we also now have 3 hosts who are able to do that, stay on top of it, whereas last year we had effectively 1, really, and then they also were kind of the CSOs too, which really wasn't a good role at all. So we're seeing a little uptick in Bone, but still not at the numbers that we were planning on.
So I had a thought which I had sent as part of this. I know that last year, Memorial was pretty intense, but it doesn't sound like because of the rain, it really wasn't that much here. But thinking about the 4th of July weekend, I'm kind of curious of a potential idea to direct people with these maps, this is awesome, to Bone Park, and maybe to incentivize that, that we suspend just for the 4th of July weekend, the parking price at Bone Park. So in other words, hey, you can go there and park for free. But I don't know if that's something that you all can sort of make on the fly decision with approval. Does that require some kind of resolution? But I just don't know if that's an idea that even anybody would be interested in embracing. But it's almost like a flash sale to get people perhaps to move to Bone Park more, because I was there on Saturday and it was, I think I saw 3 cars.
Yeah, and honestly, I think part of it is the amenities at Laverne Johnson with the zip line, the splash pad, the stream play. Bone's fun, don't get me wrong. But I think that's also part of it. But there are families that regularly go to Bone that know that it's quieter and...
They seemed more locals.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is the shelter reservations. We have the 3 shelters at Laverne Johnson. So you have a covered space to have a, 5-year-old's birthday or a family reunion type of thing, and you have shade, and you have, in case you get rain, you're covered, whereas we don't have that yet at Bone Park. But we're happy to entertain it if you guys, is that your decision?
Any other questions? Trustee Browning?
Have there been any issues at Lauren Johnson Park this year with drones flying, bothering the eagles like there were last year? We talked about that a little bit at our planning session about.
I only know of one instance, and again, by having CSOs there, granted, they're only there on the weekends, but they're able to tell people where they cannot be. So
Okay.
I only know of the one.
That was something I hope that staff would kind of look at, because you have broad authority to regulate that. I mean, there are limitations, as the town attorney has told us, but I think that's something that could be done administratively if we wanted to, and I'd rather prevent rather than react on that if we could.
Sure.
Okay,
All right.
thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Go visit Bone. Takeaway.
And then a last update is very quick. As you guys know, the Planning Commission is looking at downtown development guidelines, and we have been able to secure 2 outside resources to help with those. So we do have Main Street and DOLA are going to fund 2 projects. One is called a retail gap analysis and recruitment strategies for our downtown, and they'll be starting that process in July. The other is helping us put out an initial request for qualifications and proposals for the downtown development guidelines, and then conducting the public comment period on our behalf. And that would be this fall. So I think both of those measures will be helpful in our downtown business strategies that are looming over us right now. We did get a notice from the owners of 446 Main Street, the empty lot, that they are not going to pursue their building because of their stormwater concerns. We do have a proposal that's a $16,000 proposal to go to the next step on that stormwater drainage, to come up with a more concrete plan specifically for High Street that we could consider, but was not budgeted for. But I know that at one point, Mayor, you had said that you wanted to know if that lot ever became available again, so it sounds like it may be.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an unusual lot, and it's such a difficult lot to build on, and it's not like there's a lack of other potential spaces where someone couldn't go.
Yeah.
I think it's something the town may just want to consider purchasing it and doing something like.
The farmer's market again.
I don't know. I mean,
That
I
was
think the
popular, yeah.
town could potentially make it a activity center. I've seen
The
different
visitor
communities
center,
put like a
chamber.
little game or something, and something that draws people to town. And maybe some other entity will, I mean, I think we just maybe have to start thinking about uses that don't require building,
Yes.
potentially.
Or only using half the lot for a center
knows?
like that, and then an outdoor space for other activities.
I mean, even when there was the big chair there,
Yeah.
some piece of art or something that's interactive that
Sure.
people can do something on, it actually at least gave kids who were maybe waiting for a table at a restaurant or something to go. People took pictures on that all the time. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like
Paul
it's
asked me to share that because he said you
challenging
wanted to
space.
know it was coming back open.
Could you just say again what the RFP was for? I was trying
The
to take
RFP
notes
was
there.
for helping us draft the initial request for proposals for review of our downtown development guidelines, and conducting, like facilitating the public comment on those.
When you
through
say
Main Street.
review, what do you mean by review? Like, who would-
Because the Planning Commission is working on those, this entity would come in and do a review of those for us based on Main Street and DOLA, those eyes.
Okay.
And then also facilitate the public comment period, so it's not our own staff or Planning Commission having to do that.
Great. Okay. All right, thanks. Anything else?
No, I don't believe so.
All right. All right, a lot of good updates. So we'll move on to audience business. This is the portion of the meeting where the public is welcome to address the board on topics that are not on tonight's agenda for a public hearing. The only public hearing we have on tonight's agenda is related to a liquor license application for You Pump It at 4065 Ute Highway. So if you're here for that item, please wait for the public hearing later under the Liquor Licensing Authority. Otherwise, you're welcome to address the board for any other topics of concern or interest. Each person will have 4 minutes. Give your name and address for the record, please. So is there a sign-up sheet? Okay.
It's the only person who's.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Tess McDonald, 376 JJ Kelly Road. So I first wanted to reference the CDOT discussion, and I wanted to say that Dale Case, the land use director of Boulder County, he actually approved the 800-acre expansion of the Martin Marietta mine without even, it was an expired permit, 20 years old. He actually approved that without contacting CDOT. And the change in traffic would be 240 additional semi-trucks every day at 66 and 36. Just FYI. Okay, I first want to say thank you. So the shift in priorities to serve the public in regards to weed management is much appreciated for mamas like myself. With this integrated approach, I believe you will find more effectiveness in the long term too. You, the BOT, made a step towards dechemicalizing our ecosystem with the rejection of glyphosate. But just because our town doesn't use glyphosate doesn't mean other chemicals aren't also harmful. The old adages like my grandma smoked a pack a day and she lived to 100 don't work anymore. In 1967, when most of your parents had already reached adulthood, 4% of the population had chronic disease. Today, almost 46% of our children do. That's asthma, cancer, so on and so forth. Of course, there are exceptions, but Grandma grew up eating organic vegetables, breathed in clean air, and enjoyed glyphosate-free water. So pesticides are a threat to our health and well-being and a waste of our time and money, and here's why. Barren ground starts the process of succession. Whether it's a flood or the spraying of pesticides, barren ground will only breed weeds. Succession is nature's process of rebuilding the forest floor from the barren ground up. Let's not fight nature anymore. Healthy soil equals healthy plants. Sterile soil, weak plants that are dependent on chemicals. But diversity becomes self-sustaining and regenerative. Bees need dandelions. Dandelions are one of the first flowers to bloom. How sad that a bee's first spring drink may be poisoned. Weeds can provide medicine and food. Dandelions were actually brought over on the Mayflower on purpose. Know your weeds. There are only a few weeds that we're legally bound to remove, like thistle, knapweed, myrtle spurge, for example. Many weeds we can leave and can actually cleanse the soil and our waterways, prevent erosion, prevent compaction. So let's pick our battles. Soil health is key. Fertilization comes from compost. Keeping nutrients local will help make our residents' gardens thrive. Food is expensive. Let's not poison our wild and free alternative food source. Beer prices are going up, guys, and let's not poison our water that makes our beer. Realize our connection to the food chain, please. And also, licensed commercial applicators are liable if they do not contact all homeowners registered on the Pesticide Sensitive Registration of Colorado. And all commercial businesses where the general public visit are supposed to be contacted within 24 hours of chemical spraying. Most contractors do not know this, and if you know someone with a sensitivity or has a family who's genetically less tolerant to chemicals, then consider sharing this fact. It's only a 3-page application, and it does require a doctor's note. The Eco Board voted that no one should be sprayed without their knowledge. Lastly, our businesses are thriving with less pesticides on Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't think anyone else signed up, but if anyone else would like to speak during audience business, you're welcome to come up.
I'm coming. Thought some of these other folks would be talking. Anyhow, I'm all connected here with the ear thing, a microphone, so that's nice. First, I'm Laverne Johnson, 306 Evans, and today we got a certified letter the museum did from a tower up by Fortsburg, so no doubt the town got one, and I don't know how to digest it or why it said something about archaeology, so I just wanted to kind of tip you off. Surely we're not the only ones, and I assume they're wanting to put a higher tower up there. So we'll probably be running into that. I was also pleased that the shooting ranges, 7 shooting ranges, got grants to enlarge their facilities, and they didn't even include the shooting range that they're talking about in Lyons. So that was in the paper lately, and I was glad to hear that. And we want to invite you to the Good Old Days, which is Sunday, June the 29th. It starts the night before with alumni classes of 69, their 50th year. Classes 67, 68, and 70 will all be meeting and will be at Oscar Blues. Then next day they're going to have coffee at the Stone Cup and have a tour of the elementary school. And then at 1 o'clock the museum is having the program on honoring alumni, Mr. and Mrs. Good Old Days, the classes of the 09s. And at 1:30, then we're going to celebrate the 40th year of the museum. We have a nice display of 40 artifacts in 40 years. So when we first got that building, which took us 2 years to save, we didn't have any displays. All we had was George Washington's picture and that little bead thing. So now it is full. So people have been generous with their artifacts. We're joining the town, and they're having games over east of the elementary school by Dizzy's, which is those blow-up games. And theirs is from 2 to 4. And then after our program, we're going to have tours of the museum, our new displays, and then they're going to have 2 hours of music. And we have a community alumni picnic coming up from 5 to 8 at Laverne Park. And we hope you'll all join us. We're ready to send out our invitations, and we want to invite Connie to come and speak and all the rest of you to come. So, and the Lions Community Foundation are going to sell root beer floats, and for $5 you get a root beer float in this neat cup. So you have to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business? All right, we'll close audience business, and I would entertain a motion to recess as the Lions Board of Trustees and open as the Lions Liquor Licensing Authority.
I move to recess as the Board of Trustees and open as the Lions Liquor Authority.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. Okay, 6-0, we are now the Lions Liquor Licensing Authority. I'll turn it over to staff to make a presentation.
Okay, in my packet that was in the, my presentation for the packet, on May 16th, I received an application from Sam Shrestha from the U Pump It. He operates under Maya Mart, and he was looking to do a retail liquor store there. So he's turned in all the application, all the paperwork. We've done the background check through CBI. He's cleared everything. Ian Greer went with me to do an on-site inspection so we could see where, because the hard alcohol has to remain behind the register. They can't shop around with those items. They've got the dedicated coolers in the back, and then they've got a storage room to the side that's locked and accessible only by employees. He did turn in a petition that had some signatures on it, and I uploaded that for your review too. I think that one was just a tougher call because a lot of people signed it, and it's stated they live in Lyons, but it's, Spring Gulch Road or anywhere else, so that was just the only thing. The lease is in there. We properly noticed everything, posted on site, and we did not receive any complaints or comments either way, so I think that's, if you have any questions for me.
Good. Are there any questions for the clerk pro tem? Trustee Farrell?
So I just wanted to verify where, I'm assuming they're going to have their alcohol behind them, but if they wanted to store extra.
They've got a storage room on the side.
Is that inside the building or
It's
outside?
inside the building.
Okay, because it doesn't show it in the diagram. I just saw the storage shed outside and I thought.
Right, no, and they're not
wonderful.
going to be using the storage sets outside. It's inside. There's a bathroom down the hallway.
Okay.
And then there's a little storage to the side there that's locked.
Okay, that's all I needed to clarify.
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah, they didn't license anything outside of the main building, just the inside.
This is really just a small thing, but just on the checklist, it looks like there's a couple sections that just aren't checked off. I mean, the diagram, it sounds like you have to have a diagram, and there's a diagram in here clearly.
Yes.
Just for completeness of the application, you might want to go back and look and make sure every section that shows the staff did what they
What it
needed to
needed,
do.
okay. Right, and I think there was two, because we had been going through them, because there had been a question, and I called the state because he's an LLC and they wanted an operating agreement, but he's the sole member of the LLC, and the state was like, well, how do you have an operating agreement with yourself?
yourself,
So,
yeah.
So there was just a few things, but he did.
Sure, and clearly some of them aren't applicable.
Right.
Might be good to mark those NA.
Okay.
Just so it's clear that you didn't require
Right.
that of them. I mean, it looked like the packet was complete, that we had all the information we needed, though, so. Any other questions for staff? Applicant presentation before public hearing, if they'd like to. Yeah, if the applicants would like to come up and make any additional presentation to the board, you're welcome to do so at this time. It's not required. No? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public comment for the liquor license application at You Pump It at 4065 Ute Highway in Lyons, Colorado. Anyone like to speak to this application? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion, please?
I move that we approve the application as recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any further comments or discussion from the board? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All right, the application is approved 6-0. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn as a liquor licensing authority and return to the BOT?
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. Okay, and we are back. We have a presentation tonight from our chair of the Lyons Arts and Humanities Commission. So I'd like to invite Melinda to come up. Thank you. This is going to be a short presentation. I've asked him to help me with some images. Just one person.
list of sculptures slash art slash paintings that have been installed in town. The majority of them are, 18 of them are with the Hearts of Lions. Since our call to artists, I guess it's been at least 18 months since we did the first call to artists. We've installed about 18 pieces. We've got one pending that we have for the visitor center that we're trying to get in there. But it's electrical, so it requires your engineer to finesse it. We would like to do another call to artists at the end of August. And we have places, landing stones for about 4 more on Main Street. We've just moved a couple pieces out. You've probably noticed some things have changed. We have many spots in Bond and Laverne Johnson Park. So those are going to be our next, really the big push now is to get some interesting works in those parks. This has been a lot of fun. It's been a learning experience. We're dealing with the town and with CDOT and with landscape people and water people and oh my goodness. Anyway, some pieces become quite complicated. We just did one in Bond that was next to the bridges. And that turned out to be kind of a complicated piece because we had selected a perfect spot for it, but it was going to get hit with water. And we were worried about access of children climbing on it. And so each piece has a whole set of challenges. And we just kind of take each piece at a time that comes in. So we could scroll through here, Kim, and you can see some that are, you all have recognized these, I'm sure. We have lots that we're working on now, a sculpture map for the Town Alliance website, and we hope to have a printed map, which is going to be in all the stores in town that people can hand out. So that's coming down the pipe here. The big effort here, if you scroll to see the owl, the Bell of Renewal. So you all are probably familiar with this because you helped us make it happen financially. This piece is, Kim, if you go down to the next one or two, you can see progress on it. It's now at the foundry, it's being poured. It will probably be done at the end of summer. And we have, I understand from Ariel, maybe a landing spot for it by the new walking bridge. I'm hoping on 3rd. So this has been a lot of fun. What's been great about it is that Anita and James are real pros. And the town has been fantastically supportive. So it's like been a dream project. No problems so far. We have raised, independent of the town, the LAHC has raised $3,000. And we just got another donation today from one of the trustees. Thank you very much. And we hope to keep raising money. And if you donate more than $250, your name will be in the bronze plaque at the bottom of the work. So that's been a great project. But the real reason for me coming today was to just hopefully plant a seed with the board, with the BOT, and that is that the Marquee Triangle, that sorry piece of property that's, I'm sure, you probably have had tons of discussion about it for many, many years. But the Lions Art Commission would very much like to be involved in the discussions of the landscape design and a possible landing spot for a significant work. And we would like to just, be in conversation. We know it's not going to happen for several years, maybe 2 or 3 years, but we don't want you to get too far down the road without protecting a space in the design to put in a permanent installation. And we have, if you'll scroll back, please, Kim. John King, as many of you know, is a renowned kinetic artist here in town. He's one of the most important kinetic artists in the United States. And we, the LAHC is very interested in recognizing him on a bigger scale and possibly having John create the piece. So we're looking at about 50,000, maybe, give or take 10,000. And so it would take us a few years to raise the money. And we would use that wonderful thermometer from the library. So that's the plan. And this is the blue butterfly piece that's out in front of Western Stars, which is kinetic. It does move when it's windy. So we'd like to have John create something really large for the triangle. But we just didn't want you to get too far down the road without thinking about a wonderful sculpture there. We really missed the opportunity on the library, on the exterior of the library. So we want to make sure that we get in the ground floor with what you all have planned. So that's my report.
Well, I just want to compliment you and your whole group. The art around town is just spectacular. And I hear it from people as they come into the businesses. They're curious about the pieces. We probably should know a little more about them because people want to know who they are, how the town has managed to do this. And it's all volunteers. I mean, this is really your work and the group's work, and it's just, it really brings a lot to the town. So thank you so much for your efforts. I love the idea of a local artist being the one to create a prominent piece for the town. So I love that idea, and we'll love to learn more about how we can creatively come up with ways to fundraise for that. Anything else from the board? Okay, thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, you want to announce you have a show?
Yes. Yes, good. We have, this show will come down in July 12th? July? Yeah.
July 13th, 14th. Oh, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong date, 12th, you're right.
Okay.
12th is Friday.
So it comes down on the 12th and goes back up, and so the opening reception is Saturday, the 13th. And Oscar Blues, sorry, July 13th. Oscar Blues is donating the food, which is fantastic. They are so generous, and it's from 5 to 7:30. So please come and enjoy some good munchies and wine and art, right? Yeah,
Where is it again? I'm sorry.
It's here.
Oh, it's this usual one. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. When you said Oscar Blues, I wasn't sure if you were talking.
Seniors.
All right, 55 and older.
Eyes of Wisdom.
Yes.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Will the clerk please read the items on consent into the record, please?
Resolution 2019-47, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving an overseer for Apple Valley Waterline contract. Resolution 2019-54, a resolution of the Town of Lyons Apple Valley Waterline construction manager. Resolution 2019-58, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado approving a license agreement with the Palmerton Consolidated Ditch Company for the Eastern Quarter Utilities Project. Resolution 2019-59, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving a crossing agreement with Rough and Ready Irrigating Ditch Company for the Eastern Quarter Utilities. Resolution 2019-63, a resolution of the Town of Lyons accepting public improvements and closeout of the project Bowen Park in-stream reworking fishing is fun construction contract with DeFalco. Resolution 2019-64, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado to close out and accept public improvements for the Lyons Valley River Park in-stream restoration flood construction project, PF 20F with Colton Still. Resolution 2019-65, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving professional services agreement for materials testing services for the Apple Valley Water Relocation Project with Ground Engineering Consultants. Resolution 2019-66, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving a parking license agreement for the use of town-owned property by Telluride Bluegrass Festival, PBC, or its summer 2019 festivals.
For summer, I think that's it.
First reading for ordinance 1060, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons amending section 2-6-270 of the Lyons Municipal Code related to penalties for non-civil traffic offenses. This will also be first reading for ordinance 1061, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado amending section 1-4-20 of the Lyons Municipal Code relating to general penalty for criminal violation, the June 2019 accounts payable, and the June 3rd, 2019 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
All right, would anyone like to pull any items from consent, please? Trustee Caravas?
Number 1, please.
Any others? Is there a motion to approve the remaining items on consent, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. And the remaining items are approved, 6-0. Thank you. Actually, trustee, you're missing trustee vote. Okay, I bet the chair, I bet it's the chair. Okay, okay, so we are to our first general business item, which was the addition related to the trustee seat. So for those who maybe weren't here when we started the process, we, during the break, the trustees gave their kind of candidate choices in ranked order to staff. So staff tallied the results to see kind of where we are in terms of the selections, and so we'll let the staff kind of give us those results as a starting point. Go ahead.
So we have a tie.
Of course we do.
Funny enough, between two of the candidates. So shall we name the two
Yeah.
candidates as tie? So Caleb and Yelena had a tie,
Okay,
and so that's where we're at.
all right. So.
An exact tie, including rank every way you can look at it. That exact tie. So.
All right. So I guess, for discussion's sake, I think it would be helpful to kind of go around and talk about kind of not necessarily who you chose, but what things were important to you in making your decision. And then we'll go through this process one more time and see if things change. And ultimately, this is difficult because, and I think I want to start off by saying, and I said it during the special meeting, that any of the folks who submitted applications, and there were originally 5 up to 6 that were interested, and we would be thrilled to have any of them on the board. I think the town would be in excellent hands with any of them, and I am hopeful to see all of them submit and pull packets in whatever date comes around, January 2020. And I think that would be just a really great thing for the town. So I think what we'll do is just kind of start the discussion with the board and kind of what went into the decision and go from there. Anyone like to start? Trustee Browning?
Well, first, I would echo Mayor Sullivan's comments that all 3 of the applicants that remained were highly qualified. And I much appreciate all of them taking the time and effort to apply. And I, again, also hope that they will all consider running for the next term. To me, this is a very difficult decision. It's a trade-off of experience, which is valuable, versus getting relatively new residents to town, particularly younger families, involved in the town governance process. We've been trying to encourage that for years, and we had 2 of the candidates that I think fit that qualification of fairly recent residents and younger families. And then we had another applicant, Caleb, who's been very active in town governance for years and has experience serving the community and is well informed about town government. It makes it a very difficult choice. I think it's very hard to pick between those 2 competing sort of considerations.
I echo Trustee Browning's sentiments, but I do think in this particular instance, because it is in the middle of a term, that it's important to have the background and knowledge of how a board works, because it is such a large learning curve. That is one thing that I think is going to be important, to be able to jump right in and know kind of what's going on and how town government works and what the issues have been. So for me, that was one of the important deciding factors in this decision. I obviously want all three of them to run in April, because we always have such a hard time getting people to run. But I think it's great that we have some new people that are willing to jump in. But like I said, I do think that in this particular case, it's important to have that historical knowledge and have the experience of being involved in the town already.
Yeah, I have similar thoughts to the previous two board members' comments. I'm delighted by the presentations, delighted by the applications. Certainly, all three are quite good applicants, and I sincerely appreciate all three participating. I do think it's very important to to consider the sort of the segments of the population who would be represented, and looking to the future, as well as understanding the current circumstances of the town. So that makes it a kind of a one of those difficult situations to consider on balance. So those are the kind of the two things that I'm personally looking at. One is the ability to contribute now and into the future, and the other is sort of what constituencies get brought to the table with the selection. Thanks.
Yeah, I had similar thoughts, I guess, and when you're in a situation where they're all good and anyone would do a great job, I think it does come back a little bit to what would complement the board as well, in addition to the things that the Mayor Pro Tem said, and who would be represented that maybe isn't represented already. That's just one aspect. That's not the only aspect. But I had, I liked that Yelena represents a newer resident, someone who's not been here quite as long, who maybe looks at the town with fresh eyes. And I think that's a helpful perspective to have. And I actually really appreciated her skill set and her knowledge, and the idea of, looking at things through the lens of making sure that there's equity and fairness and considering all sides. That's really the best qualities you could hope for in a trustee. Certainly Caleb has the background and the experience, so just different qualities and different strengths, I would say, in each candidate. Either would serve this board really well. So I think a flip of the coin wouldn't necessarily be a bad way out of this situation. Would I kind of have to lean one way or the other? But I appreciated that Yelena was committed to saying I'm in for more than just this one term, and was willing to say that. And I think that comes too with being new energy. So I think that that did sway me a little bit. So, Trustee Karabas?
I guess my colleagues have said almost right down the lines. And I'd first like to thank all three of the applicants for applying. It's not something that one, does lightly because there is a time commitment and there is, sometimes hot late nights in a room or cold, depending if you're windy and the back door's open. What Pro Tem Drysdale said about the two different segments, we had very much two different segments. Someone who's new, and I did start on the board and I was just 2 years in too, along with former Jim Kerr. So that does add a level of catch-up also when you're in the middle of flood recovery and issues that are going on. But as Wendy stated, hitting, or Trustee Miller, sorry, Wendy, hitting the floor running at this juncture with just outside budget season, and we've got some serious issues going on, is where I was leaning more. And I think it would be very important to this board that, and can't go wrong with either. I mean, all three candidates are, like we said, are wonderful. So, and I'd like to see them apply come January. But that's where I'm at.
Trustee Farrell?
So I think I would be happy with either candidate at the end of the day. But since we have to make a choice and we only have one, I think that in terms of a learning curve, having gone through this being my very first term with very little to no experience, it's absolutely reasonable and doable. And I appreciate that we're in the middle of a term, but I think that what we have currently as a board is a very strong, forthcoming with our thoughts and opinions. And so actually having fresh eyes or perhaps being new to the process doesn't create anxiety for me or fear that, a new person to the game couldn't handle it. I absolutely think that it is possible. Budgets can be extremely intimidating at first. It wasn't that bad. So, I don't think that would be something to stop anyone coming into this position. I think that we don't have somebody with littles on this board, somebody who's got very young children and seeing what it's like to be a young mother in the town with children at the park and seeing those kinds of experiences and bringing that forward. I do think that Yelena has shown a long-term commitment. She actually did apply for a job as Director of Parks and Recreation. No?
No, not director.
Okay.
Just in the park.
So in the parks, but she applied for a position in the town. I actually think what she ran into, it sounds like, was that financially it wasn't reasonable. So I think that she now has the experience to speak to that and why that might be an issue. So that's my leaning right now at this point. Caleb, I think that what you've done for the town is amazing, and I would love to please see you continue, and please come back in 2020.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is, just, we're going to do one more tally, see if after discussion anyone's had a change of, now that we're down to two. So if you want to just, I don't know, not everybody revealed which way they were really leaning. And so, so I think let's just do this one more time, let staff look at them, and if there's a majority, one way or the other. Otherwise, if not, we're going to flip a coin. I think that's really the best if we're tied, there's really no other way out of it. All right. Mike, you just...
You only need one to go pepper with that.
Oh, you just want one name? It doesn't matter. Or one. That's true.
Anybody else need one?
No, but you can collect them.
It's a precursor to the Democratic Convention.
Let's hope not. For future reference, it would be helpful to have some kind of defined process, because this is horrible. But, whoever doesn't get it, I think there are plenty of open seats on a couple of boards and commissions. So, not that we have your name. It did not change. Okay. Would the board be agreeable to flipping a coin?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, there's only 6 board members, so.
This is why we cannot leave the seat open.
Is there any reason why a staff member couldn't break the tie?
No.
No.
Can't be done.
Okay.
No.
So we're going to flip for it?
I don't like that.
I got one over there. Okay, Bill has a quarter.
Either outcome is great, so just, Caleb, you're here. Do you want to call
The
it?
election, they give you there's a, how does it work though? Heads up, tails up, what? Small town politics. Jeez.
I think Caleb could call it since he's here. Yeah. Call heads or tails.
Here, I'm not flipping, I can't. So tails up means that he gets it.
Yeah. Which outcome do you prefer? Yeah.
It is tails.
All right, congratulations.
Congrats, Caleb.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And sincerely, we really couldn't go wrong either way. And so it's great to have, we had candidates, which we were like, we were somewhat worried that we wouldn't have anybody apply. So, but it was actually great to see we had a good, strong showing, and I hope all of them come back, because there'll be more seats available in 2020. Plenty of opportunity to serve. So I want to just personally thank Yelena and Anya for their applications and for the work they put in to be here tonight and to make a presentation. And Anya also had great skills. A little bit of a probably disadvantage to not be able to be here in person, but clearly the town has some great new talent that hopefully we'll be tapping into in the near term. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we talked about process for appointment moving forward.
Yep.
Mayor Sullivan?
Go ahead.
I mean, I think so, and this is mostly directed at Caleb. So what's going to happen is we'll need to have a vote to appoint Caleb as a member of the Board of Trustees at this meeting. That'll be ratified by resolution at the July 1st meeting, and you'll be sworn in on July 1st.
All right. Is there a motion?
I move to appoint Caleb Roberts to the open position on the Board of Trustees of Lions, Colorado.
I will
Is there a second?
second that motion.
Oh, okay. I just want to make one comment. I am really looking forward to your sense of humor, because quite honestly, we really kind of need that up here. And so we are looking forward. I hope you bring that with you when you take your seat next meeting. Trustee Browning?
But also, a new trustee with musical talent, I think, needs to sing the Star Spangled Banner or something.
That would be great, too. All right, I'll call for the vote. Sorry, I had the wrong buttons on. So thank you so much. We'll see you next meeting. All right. Next item on the agenda.
Would you be opposed to a 5-minute recess?
No. If you want to make the motion, you're welcome to. Oops, I'm so sorry.
I move for a 5-minute
Having
recess,
button
please.
issues. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. All right, thank you very much. We'll be right back. Thanks.
Fast pitch softball umpire and once flipped a coin the home team and visitors team, and I missed it.
Remember the
And it went into the
microphone is
sand at home plate and it buried. You couldn't see. You could totally see. It just went straight up into the sand. And I still have to.
So it's still recording.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's a recess.
Please turn your mics up.
Oh, no, we're just taking a 5-minute break.
Sorry.
No, I know.
Oh, no, we're gonna be here for a while later.
Yeah, I know, that wasn't the first time they had to do it that way. No.
That's how Steve Angelo got on the board, he said. It was Nick Angelo, sorry. I know it's Steve Angelo, too.
I unplugged this microphone.
Okay.
And I moved the camera up since I'm here.
Okay.
I'll plug it in, or if
I was talking, yeah, I can. I was talking to them, is there an aux in to this? Where you can have it, I guess where the microphone goes in. What we could do is run from one of these guys to this. That way you get the clear audio from the microphone straight into the video. We can test that too. All you would need is a 3.5-inch aux cable like this, right? Running from one of these guys into this.
Oh.
And you have
What is this one for? I feel like that's what
This is the microphone, right?
Yeah, but I feel like that's what the sound guy did.
It may be. I thought they were saying that's not how it works. We can mess around with that future Monday.
I got the sense that when they redid this whole thing, that they set it up.
That's the way it should be, but Deb was saying it wasn't that way. It was using some other microphone. But if it already is, that's great.
I'll send you some I know, it's sinking in. This is the last time we were called Caitlin. After July 1st has to be at the meeting, only at the meetings. At the meetings.
Administrator Simon said.
And I said, well, I could take a 1047 or 147.
It's okay, it's just, it's the only thing we come up with that even though in the, as residents, we can still. I don't know, and here we're in a different place.
Yeah, that's very respectful. We owe
Like it almost, I was talking to myself.
I was afraid I'd drop it.
If I did,
I didn't get to meet with the
it's like throwing out the first pitch. Get it right.
There's three down, several houses, kind of in an alley.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in the alley. And
That was your bluegrass
I
days.
knocked at the door and her son answered, he said, oh, she's in the backyard going out there. I went out. She had four women, they were sitting around the table, so I turned around and I told them, I said, I don't want to turn around.
We all kind of went around.
You ought to just, well,
Well, usually I wake up
at my house now anyway.
Oh, yeah, she's very.
So far, I'm
So are you in the town?
I'm sort of in the town.
So far,
My
I'm
house
nice
is
in
in
the
the
town.
town, but it's not quite
So,
to
you know,
it.
that happened.
So I'm kind of in and out.
Well, I didn't find you being good.
Thank you. Very nice.
Yeah.
Not everybody does it.
I am interested. I might get a turn one of these days.
So that's why I'm asking people.
Thank you. Not yet. I'm not in town enough yet.
No, you buy it, your land.
Yes.
So you could probably run with
One of these days. Resident board endorsement.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was. I'll probably move in July. So I miss April, you know. Alas. One of these days. Just means I'll get smarter.
Generated a product and nothing else that residency is.
I'll find out a way to do it.
About what residency was.
voting age that changed to 18 and all students. Oh, yeah, she was all these universities with large concentrations of students. You're saying, no, they gotta be residents. We had to change their education.
So they had a real advantage there because normally, one of the residential standards is where you sleep, where your pillow is, where you drop your head at night. And there are a bunch of others, but that's the most, universities have that one. There are a couple of states where you have to intend to stay.
Yeah, it was congressional race. Yeah, that's an official way to determine it.
I did a bunch of voter registration in Ohio.
No, I read your work.
You had to be willing to say.
Mad Max.
Last person standing.
So that's why I put you around and announced him.
That'd be fun. Billy brought it in there.
That'd be pretty fun.
Right, and he's like,
Newport News.
and he said, I said, look, I don't care about the fight, I just want you to be on this.
And I knew that.
Because they accused
Thanks
him
for
of
checking. I appreciate it.
financial.
You want to get it right, and it was a good result.
And I
Kelly's gonna
said,
be great.
oh yeah, I was there, I said, you have, you're a finance director, maybe somebody I could talk to, and they said, no. They said, no. And I said, well, that doesn't seem like it's wrong.
They have liquor license, how it should be.
Did you throw those away?
Not that there's a difference between the prayer.
I know, they're right here. Right here.
Awesome.
You wanna be the first?
Yeah, no one else has. So far, I'm dragging It was a very valuable. I've got something first thing Thursday, so anytime after.
Yeah, I do some wheels on Thursday.
She told me point blank, the reason she ran was because her family. Direction for the state. So she ran.
And he was a. Yeah, come on up. Yeah, sure.
I've got a couple. Some market sandwiches.
You want to? Say what? 1 o'clock? Sure.
And the quarry have a lot of nice.
What's your favorite?
Anything with no mayonnaise. As long as there's no mayonnaise, I'm happy.
Yeah, no.
Just so you don't have to try to figure it out. Sometimes it's made easy if we actually are making a choice.
I know.
Please leave us with sourdough or wheat.
Sourdough, sure. Now you're giving yourself too much of a challenge. Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you.
Welcome. Now you're gonna come up and talk about things back to your hand too.
Now there's things we can't talk about.
I don't know, maybe.
Never before.
Well,
And so I looked it up, and it was in Virginia in 2017, they had an absolute tie after several rankouts. And so they had pulling a drawing of law requirement.
But you and I can talk about it.
Straws was being appointed for meeting.
Oh, yeah, just the two of us.
I remember
Right.
listening to this on CNN, they picked names out of a hat.
That'd be the same as the.
And then the Republican won, you know, it was a complete tie.
Oh, I was actually.
You can't argue with.
Yeah.
You really can't argue.
Yeah, I mean, they did several recounts, so they kept going tie. So.
That'd be good.
We're in 2015 Mississippi State congressional race.
Yeah, no, that's really.
Tied by drawing straws as well.
But you bought Coco's.
Yeah. Did they in Colorado?
Oh, okay. You all go because is it, what's the cutoff point, or what's the?
I don't know, but, well, Sandy and I, our proofreader, we're off.
Yeah, yeah.
Laura, I'm not sure if she gets in because they all love her.
Okay, now let me fall over on you. I know, catch me if I fly. I'll remember that because they things like this.
All right. Next item on general business is an update from staff basically regarding whether or not we could move forward with an advisory question on the shooting range or anything else we wanted to put on there.
Having done the legal research, we think you can do an advisory question on this matter. Once again, we'd reiterate that if there were to be an advisory question on the November ballot, we'd also ask as a staff that there be a ballot question on publishing ordinances by title for the reasons we've mentioned, particularly the International Building Code ones, which are many, many pages long. It's much easier to do it by title. So we think you can. I am somewhat confused personally whether the letter's already been authorized at the prior meeting and what effect that this would have, or what the question would be. Would help us formulate this question if it's the board's position that would like an advisory question. What will this authorize?
So I guess the one question I have was, is the letter drafted?
No.
Did we draft anything? So I guess one, I think the letter was to convey concerns from the board.
Okay.
Things that we've heard. I actually went back and looked, and we really hadn't had a substantive discussion. You know, it's been over a year since this first came to the board. It came back, I want to say, before March of 2018, because I wrote a column on it, and I had to write another column this weekend, and I wrote it on this topic. And so I was looking at, okay, when did I write that? And so, you know, it's just, I think this would be specifically to get the pulse of the Lions community proper about this particular issue, just to get a more definitive direction of how the community feels. Because I would agree that the feedback often, depending on when you get it and how you do it, tends to sometimes feel fairly split. And so it's hard to know sometimes, though, whether those are really constituents or if there's outside influence, you know, coming through those channels. You know, you don't always know. So it was just, you know, this is just a way to kind of get a better sense for how the Lions residents feel, who would all be the most impacted by this decision. The couple just quick updates, though. So the forest land has been closed, so that announcement was made. You can look and see in the maps, and not a lot of the closures are actually near Lions. So, you know, it doesn't, proximity-wise, impact us too much, like where they actually made the closures. And I also just know the school district is looking into the issue as well to see what they might want to do from a, you know, just discussion perspective. We got an email from Gary. I don't know if that was sent to the whole board. It was a very brief email that basically said there's no new progress. So it wasn't anything different from what I had heard from one of the commissioners prior to our last call. So, you know, the status really hasn't changed since our last discussion, since we did this. So, you know, I think timing-wise, you need to know fairly quickly, right? If we want to move forward.
We have to have first reading at the next meeting.
Okay. Thoughts? Trustee Farrow, go first if you'd like, since you asked for this agenda item last time.
Yeah, I actually think that if we can couple it with another genuine question, and I you know, what I see people saying online, I did go back and watch the video of the last meeting. It seemed to me the most of the people that showed up and said something for public discussion was that they are not in favor of the shooting range. So I don't feel like I have a genuine understanding of what does our community want or not want. And so I think that this is the best way to give us the direction that we're seeking to be able to make the best decision possible.
Trustee Browning?
Question of the town attorney. If we do an advisory question on a ballot, do you do like pro and con statements on that like you do other ballot questions? No.
No.
So there's no mail out along with other measures on the ballot?
Not from what I've seen. This is my first advisory ballot question, and so it's going to be a learning process for me as well. But from what I've seen, there's not a blue book that describes pros and cons statements.
Trustee Miller?
I just wonder if it's necessary that we do it before April, because it seems to me like there's not really any movement happening with Boulder County, and so I wonder if it's really necessary if we spend the money, extra money to do it in November, instead of just waiting until April to put it on the April ballot with everything else, because I think we'll get more responses if we put it on the April ballot. Because I really don't think they're going to be any further along in April than they are now, quite honestly. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I actually had the same thought, that it might make sense to put it on in April. That way, it gives us time, gives the county some time to respond to the letter, see if it really is going to go anywhere. I do hesitate to get people excited and riled up about something that maybe is going to resolve itself potentially, but I like that we're kind of being a little more formal with our communication with the county in terms of the concerns, and it gives us more time too. But I really do like the idea of putting the question on the ballot, and I do agree we get a much better turnout usually around the April election. So I don't know that I would see the harm in waiting, but I don't know how you or anybody else feels about that.
Look at my notes from last meeting. That's where I think you brought that up before, and I don't know if I said it, but it was on my notes out, so I was leaning also, if we know the county isn't moving, if there's something that staff knows about or you've heard about that something's starting to go, well, then maybe we look at the November. But if we can wait, say, we're going to have a ballot anyway for seats here, that we do it then. And should something arise, it can arise in August, October, it'd be too late anyway for us to do a letter. Well, that's why you, staff, are in meetings. If something comes up, well, then we'll have to deal with it then. But I would like to see it on the April. Just the money issue, everyone's will be voting for the mayor spot for all the seats, and it'll be more attention to it, I think.
Sorry, the button. I don't hit it at the right time sometimes.
Actually, I think that that's a really valid approach, and I think the fact that or points, I guess, and if we are going to be submitting a letter, and they already know we're having these discussions now, then they're aware of our concerns, probably more so now than they were 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I think that's perhaps well within itself valid. This does give us, without it being in a November ballot, more time to have the discussions, to be perhaps in the forefront. And then doing a ballot in the spring with the other election is fine. I'm okay with that too.
Okay. Trustee Browning?
I was going to say, I agree, and actually will make a nice campaign issue for the candidates that sign up next time. How do you feel about the gun range? And if you have that with a ballot question too, seems like to me you give it the maximum public exposure. And it kind of concerns me that you don't have explanatory blue book along with it, because there are some complicating factors here. You know, some people may vote yes or no depending on whether there are green bullet limitations or not. Some people may vote yes or no depending on what they say the sound limits are going to be. And if you couple it with the election where candidates can discuss that in forums and in newspaper articles and all that kind of thing, I think it probably helps educate the voters more than just a simple yes or no thing would be in November. So I think I'm in agreement with that. I think April's probably a better time.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do think that right now, and even in November, there's no reason to know, if you will, that there would be more information, better information, or even that the question would still be on the table. I think by waiting until next April, we'll be most likely in a better position. We'll certainly, by the deadline for preparing the question for the April ballot, hopefully we'll know a little more one way or the other.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a consensus that we are interested in doing it, but we prefer to wait until the April election. So
Works for staff.
great. So, okay, you have to, so we'll shoot for April? Sorry.
Yep.
Come on. Joseph.
Bad pun.
I don't usually make jokes. Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is the letter regarding the migrant quarry workers. I'll let staff do the update here.
Thank you. I don't have a ton of information, but I was made aware by one of our larger quarries in the area that they are having extreme difficulty getting approval of their regular migrant workers to work the quarries. And apparently last year, several of the different quarries did not get them. And apparently there's 2 rounds, so of 2 waves, they call it rounds, but 2 waves of workers that are 90-day periods. And so one of our larger quarries came to talk to me, and he said, we are not getting any workers again this year. And we are going to be out of stone in our stone yard at the end of the season. And he said it may force us to close. So that prompted us to talk to some of the others. And another one indicated that he did not get first wave any, but he was hopeful that second wave there was a commitment to have some. And so looking at the fact that we have 7 quarries in the area, not all of them use migrant workers, but those that do said this is an ongoing issue for them. It could potentially, they said, you think you can't find employees. They said, try to find employees who are willing to work heavy, hard labor, you know, and loose fingers and things like that. So he said, this was just a critical point for them in their industry of needing to have workers that are willing to do the work they need to do or not continue their production. So the mayor, it spurred the mayor to say, is this something we need to address to our representatives to let them know the impact that it's having at our local level for century-year-old businesses?
Yeah, I thought we would ask, I mean, certainly I've reached out sometimes to the staff members that I have contacts with and just said, hey, we're having this or that issue. I think if we have, you know, if we can talk to talk to all of them, kind of, even if it is just a one quarry issue, regardless. But I've heard this. I heard this last year from actually 3 of the quarries as well. So this is the 2nd year in a row that this has been a huge issue. I think a letter from the entire board just carries more weight. And so in this case, you know, I think people need to understand that this is really a serious problem. I mean, the unemployment rate is just incredibly low in Colorado. And, you know, these are workers that come every year for a long time. I mean, the same families come back to this community year over year over year. I can tell you, we have hired some of their kids to work in our store, and they're lovely families. And, you know, we benefit a lot from these skilled laborers who come back. And so I would love to see the board write a letter on behalf of the town, you know, expressing, you know, to our senators and our representative just how critical it is that we have, you know, that our quarries get the workers that they need. So.
It probably would involve our Larimer County folks as well.
Mhm.
Some of them sit on the border.
Mhm.
So they, you know, they consider it lines and all that, but we'd have to look at who is representing that group. Because we still work with them.
Okay. Is there anyone that would disagree with having staff help draft a letter? Okay. All right. There's direction to do so. Thank you. All right. The last item on general business is the update on the lease with Prof. Isaac.
The mayor and I were able to meet with Mr. Freisig on one more occasion to discuss his lease. If you recall, our last update was that he was not in favor of the majority of the lease agreement that was presented to him. And there was some obstruction of accessing that site to be able to put in our new sewer line. So we met with him again, and he would like to negotiate another lease with the Board of Trustees. We close that?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Being attacked.
He is requesting to negotiate another lease with the Board of Trustees. He would like to see an 18-month lease, but we reiterated maybe 12 to 18 months, and give the town the first right of refusal on the building. And then he said at the end of the lease, he would give the town the opportunity to buy the building for 75% of the market value at the time, if it was still there. The mayor did reiterate that we felt the most beneficial, not the most beneficial, but the moving the building onto his own property in the front would actually increase his value and would lose this encumbrance that we're both facing right now. He agreed with that and said that was an option for him. And that he has been emptying it out and trying to kind of inventory and evaluate what his options are right now. He did reiterate that he has no problem with the trail easement, and he thinks that it should be crusher fund, that was his, and that if we were in negotiations of a lease, he would not stand in the way of boring the sewer line installation. One of the things that's important to us is an access easement to our property across his. That didn't really get brought up, but we formally, I think he knows we need it, but nonetheless, you know, we once again talked about the benefit of him annexing his property, moving the building onto it, making it a viable, marketable piece of land. He did reiterate that annexation and utilities are too expensive, or he would consider it, but to be able to go through the process and buy the utility connections that are necessary made it prohibitive for him. So what I'm coming to you tonight is there an interest in renegotiating a lease with Mr. Freisig? And if so, how would you like to proceed?
Did you have a comment first?
Yeah, I just want to give you an update on the legal process to date on this. As the board did authorize the last meeting to move forward on the eviction process for Mr. Freisig, so he was personally served by Boulder County Sheriff's Office. The complaint for the eviction, I believe, has been filed at this point, but we're not requesting expedited service at this point because we knew these negotiations were ongoing. So Depending on how the board decides, we'd move forward with the eviction process. That could happen within a couple of weeks. Or the board, can decide to entertain additional negotiations. The direction I've received is to continue until stop. So we're not pushing this to move faster, but we're also not stopping it entirely. So that's kind of where we're at with the legal process at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the discussion with him was, it was, it wasn't clear why he submitted the changes he did the first time, and I think I keep coming back to like, why are we doing this? And again, it started because we were trying to get to the trail, right, and build the trail. And then we have all these encumbrances. And it just really occurred to me that I don't think we care if he's there doing his business if we can figure out how to unencumber the property that we need in the event we want to do the trail. And it made sense to me as like, I don't know if the town has any purpose for a building like this or an interest or the money to buy it. I mean, if we had several $100,000 in our bank account for land, I'm not sure this is the first property we would be interested in. But it would make more sense for him and for the town to move his building off of our land. And if that were a condition of the lease, that we would be willing to do a lease on the condition that he moved his building and gave him sufficient time to do that, now he's got a property if he wants to sell to some other business owner, it has more value, and we're not just perpetuating this problem down the road. I mean, to me, I guess my sense is that I'm not sure what a first right of refusal really does. I mean, it's a commercial property. It should be a commercial property. Better if someone uses it for that purpose. And what we need him to do is just fix all these problems and come to an agreement with us that he would fix the encumbrance, give us the easements that we need, and we separate this for the long. I mean, to me, that's actually a solution versus evicting him just means now we have one less business in town and we don't have any real purpose for that property, and we still have a building probably sitting on town property, and it's complex for the assessor. It would be nice to find something that works for him as well as the town. So I'd be open to a lease. I don't even, 12 or 18 months isn't to me. I get it, but I'm also like, I don't think we're, people don't have tons of money just to kind of we don't know everybody's circumstances. So if he were willing to move the building and either take it down completely or move it to his property, I would be perfectly fine letting him to continue to operate there. That's just my 2 cents. I don't know if anybody else has a comment. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I think, this is a time when being, avoiding the anti-business perspective I think is a good thing. As long as it does not present barriers to plans that the town has that are appropriate, including both the utilities going out and the trail, and access to that property. I think those, if we have those things, and he, particularly if he's willing to commit to moving that building, it seems to me that there's really not much to be gained by being highly adversarial with this. At least that's my perspective, as long as the town gets what it needs.
Anyone else? Trustee Browning?
Let me ask, the access easement in particular, is that something that we really may need to get the utility line completed?
It's going to make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I mean, my legal recommendation is we should not renew this lease unless we get an access easement.
Right.
Otherwise, we're going to have to basically create a road to put in the utility line.
Yeah, to me, the trail easement's important too, but the time on that is out past the lease term you're talking about. So I mean, that's something that should be in there. But to me, it's critical that he's got to agree to an access easement because that's could raise the cost to not having one could raise the cost to an ongoing time-sensitive town project. So I think that needs to be dealt with right up front. That's going to be part of the lease. There's no ifs, ands, or about it. And if he won't agree to that, then proceed forward with the eviction, because that's just critical to the town. I think it needs to be done, and he's hemmed and hawed around that before. In fact, I think at one point, didn't he tell us he wasn't going to give us one? He'd bar us from going on the town's own property. So that needs to be put to rest up front. If that's going to be a sticking point on his side, then proceed with eviction. But that, to me, that's the critical determinant. And moving the building's a good idea as well, because you're also preventing, if the lease ends and the eviction proceedings, either now or the future lease, and the building's still there, at the end of the day, it's going to cost the town money to move the building, to destroy the building. We have to do a demo contract on it. So to protect the town's financial interest, I think move the building, access easement, and the trail easement as well, because that's what we have in every other lease of property along that on that town stretch of property. So there's no reason he shouldn't agree to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I left there thinking he would agree to all of these conditions. I mean, I don't know, I don't really, it was hard to kind of understand what he didn't agree with, actually.
One thing he may be thinking construction easements, and we're talking a permanent easement to be able to get to our property.
Can you turn on your microphone?
That would be the one thing I think that would need clarified.
So does anyone feel differently? We're okay with giving him another chance, but based on our conditions and kind of a last and final offer if he can't agree, or at least be reasonably, willing.
And the board,
minor changes.
Yeah, and the board agrees a
Yeah.
permanent access easement to that property.
And I would say he needs to move the building.
Yep.
I think that's the other
Okay.
condition. By the end of the lease.
And 12 months, 18,
It's 18 gives them a year and a half. We're halfway through this year. But I think there
no
needs to be.
possibility for renewal.
I mean, I would leave it to staff to come up with no renewal. What penalties are there if he doesn't follow through with moving the building by the end of that lease?
Liquidated damages.
Yeah. So we have a guarantee.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. We are to the item pulled from consent. Trustee Caravas.
Don't know if I can pull it all up.
Can you pull your mic up?
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea, wouldn't it?
Thanks.
I don't know if I can pull it up here, but just on the resolution itself, adjust the whereas, because, let's see, so everyone's on track. 2019-47, resolution of the town lines approving an overseer for Apple Valley water line contract. When we read that in our discussions on this, it reads like a Monty Python skit. We have an overseer of the overseers. The overseers of the regular overseers aren't allowed to talk to the other overseers because Boulder County wants it that way. I mean, I just wanted to kind of adjust the second whereas at the ending of that add as required by Boulder County, semicolon, and add a new whereas. Whereas said overseer will report directly to Boulder County foregoing communications to town lines, contractors, and personnel as requested by Boulder County. And then you continue on. That just puts in there again, town lines is required to get grant money, $30-some thousand of tax, somebody's tax dollars that we're expending. Staff is having to do all the work with it, but Boulder County wants this overseer of our overseers that we've already hired, and the contractors, which we're already hiring, in a sense, it's say their overseer reports directly to them. I just kind of want that in there. So again, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Someone's questioning, it's right here in the resolution. It's the mayor's signatures on it. Our board did it, but it's because this is what they want.
Staff
And I will admit that I first started laughing when I read this, just because that.
It does sound very.
Yeah, it does.
Well, and not only that, Longmont has to have one too for the same project side by side.
Okay, well, there you go. I mean, you can make a drinking game out of this, overseer and drink, so.
It's $100,000 each for an overseer to stand on each side of the trench to oversee Longmont.
And not report to our construction manager in our construction company or you. Yeah, and that's why I'm doing this, and I try to keep it being short and sweet, so.
We went to them and actually said, can we just have one for the two, since we're gonna be side by side?
So that's my motion. And I think Deb has it written down if you want to see it.
Okay, so do you want to?
That's my motion.
Your motion
Yeah,
is
is to add that what I just read.
Okay. We need a motion to approve the resolution with, can you do it all
Okay,
together?
I can do
Your
it
mind?
all. I'll move that we pass Resolution 2019-47 with my stated adjustments to the second whereas and add in the new whereas.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All right, the item is approved, 6-0. Thank you. Trustee reports. Who would like to go first? Anybody? Trustee Farrell.
So I actually have a question. We were given a Article 11 about noise. Were we having a discussion on this at all?
No, I was just getting to that too for information.
Okay.
Because I knew that was the subject that was coming up. I just wanted you guys to see what was in the board.
We had anticipated a lot of public comment on that subject, but it did not materialize. So.
Okay.
Well, I'll just clarify. I think there was an impression that we could just add it to the agenda at the last minute. And I don't know that there was an understanding about how items get on the agenda and how the process works. So it may come up at a future meeting, but we have received some letters that we've seen. So I think the staff, I think, had in the staff report said they were going to take it up with the business.
Gotcha. Okay. I appreciate that clarification. Staff reports, basically Arts and Humanities Commission. You saw Melinda's presentation, and the commission is working really hard to raise money, and so far it's going very well for them, and so that's extremely exciting. There's some other very fantastic ideas. One is the dead tree that's at the corner of Main Street and what is that, 3rd, right next to the dentist, across from the bank. Sonny, I'm just drawing a blank on his last name. Thank you. Sonny Smith came up with the idea that we turn that tree into a piece of art where it's painted.
Because it's not carvable. It's too far.
Right, there's no bark on it whatsoever, and so it could become just another permanent piece within the town of Lyons, and coming up with, I'm sure Sunny will come up with something incredibly creative. So painting the tree, and then there's another one in one of the parks, I think it was Meadow, or maybe Laverne, yep, that it's another dead tree, and perhaps what's an idea that we could do with that as well that's somewhat similar. And one idea that was tossed around was to turn it into a graffiti tree. So we won't have as maybe perhaps by channeling these, artistic graffiti people in their own way.
And then if there's something inappropriate, we'll
just paint over it.
I'm starting.
And so that was one idea that's also being tossed around. So the commission is definitely trying to get very creative and also work with items that we have here in town that we can do to just continue to expand our art culture. That's it.
Great. Trustee Garris.
Let's see. Tomorrow, 6:30, 8:30 College Board meeting. I believe I missed the last one, so I don't have a report. I think I mentioned that my last report. Also, this Wednesday will be a UEB meeting, 4:30 to 6. Something that's been discussed in the UEB meeting is the stormwater coming off Steamboat Valley, High Street, and I think I've mentioned in our reports before. With that lot, the lot, and so if, as the mayor indicated, if the town's interested in buying, the UEB has talked about around that lot might have to be used for storm drainage, depending on what's done with High Street, and then as you go up the valley. So it's, it's part of, as you mentioned, well, it has been discussed and is part of a big picture. So it is in people's minds and discussions of what can be done, and if it, as the mayor said, we decide to buy it and use it for something, well, then we can use it for moving water off High Street that comes out from further up. And the UEB has some pretty in-depth discussions on that already. I think the last UEB meeting, Victoria, you were there. We talked a little bit about am I okay to bring that up? Sure. The RF issue with meters, I think I think we all had a person come and talk. The UEB discussed it, looked at it, but it's kind of stopping a process that's been in the works for quite a long time. So the way I hear they're still going to look at it, some research and some things. The homeowner is mitigating themselves and has asked the town for help, I believe, a little bit. Kind of wanted us to do some things and offering to pay for it to eliminate that issue. I believe, though, there's no real, at this point, when they say that they have some health problems, they admit they don't see doctors that self-diagnose at this time. So UB was kind of like, how do we make expensive changes that affects, 1,000 households? So it's kind of an issue. I think we checked with manufacturer. Manufacturers currently say they don't emit what's being said. It's kind of, I think the UB was kind of struggling with how they wanted to handle it or what they wanted to do at this point. And I believe staff was kind of,
Well, we agreed that.
Turn here.
If you recall, there was a gentleman here a few weeks ago that requested that we stop using smart meters, which are the radio read and able to do net metering and things. So he asked if he could return to an analog meter, and we found one because they're not made anymore. But he would like to do a presentation to the UEB and bring it to the board for consideration to change our policy back to analog, which would mean hand reading, walking, all of those issues. So in the meantime, I don't know if it's happened while I was gone or not, but they're supposed to install an analog meter that we located, thanks to the generosity of a UEB member, to replace his current RF meter, but he wants
to do, which is require
solar.
Means net metering is going to kick in.
But mean requires us to report it through an RF.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be, it's system-wide issue, but he wants a individual exemption, but is encouraging others in his neighborhood to also ask for that.
So it runs into that problem of we're contracted to almost 2040 with Mean. You get out of Mean, it's going to cost us quite a few $1 million to even try that. So that's the one bad thing I think Trustee Brown has brought up before with some of the leases that were written so long ago, things that go so far out. As things are changing in society so fast these days, it's we're going to have this net metering issue, and people that aren't, as more and more solar goes, regular residents are going to be paying for it, or already are. Yeah. So it's more to the drama to that issue of our solar and our meters.
If I can add a little bit on the smart meter issue, particularly because it's something we have dealt with throughout Colorado and throughout the country. A lot of state public utility commissions have looked into this issue and have found that there are no health effects or no real evidence of health effects. And part of that, the reason is because the technology within the smart meter is the same as your cell phone. It's just a cellular antenna ringing back to home base. Right. And other thing, too, is if, depending on what the town would want to do, emissions, radio frequency emissions are the sole purview of the Federal Communications Commission. And so we are not allowed, pursuant to the Telecommunications Act of 1996, from passing any law that would regulate radio emissions for radio frequency emissions. And there's been a whole slew of court cases on this, mostly in the cellular arena, saying that the preemption is complete and there's nothing we can do about it. Now, that doesn't mean the town can't choose to purchase or not purchase certain things. We couldn't pass a law saying, only meters which emit so much EMF would be allowed in town. That would not be permissible. So it's definitely a complicated issue. Yep.
All right. Trustee Browning?
Let's see, the Sustainable Futures Commission met on June 11th.
They're continuing to work with the town's sustainability coordinator on the pay-as-you-throw ordinance. They hope to do the required publication maybe this month, which, as you know, kicks off a 6-month process. They're also continuing, close to finalizing revisions to the Sustainability Action Plan. And the general process there is they're going to run those changes by other town commissions that may be affected by it, UEB, Planning Commission, others that may, the Ecology Board, others that may want input on it. And the general timetable, they hope to be able to have a board workshop on it maybe in October, if we can fit it into the schedule, and maybe present it to the board by the end of the year. It's basically updating the Sustainability Action Plan. There are also some discussions about whether zero waste collection at the Lions Outdoor Games could be improved. They didn't think that there were enough either stations to do recycling and organic waste in particular, and not enough volunteers, and therefore the diversion rate was not what they had hoped for. So that's something we also need, if we have a session later about Lions Outdoor Games, that's something we need to look at, as well as if we have a stated goal of zero waste. It's probably not, total zero waste probably isn't attainable, but they thought that the diversion rate was not as good as it should be. That's mainly what they discussed. And then I'd like to add one other item to put on the public record. I've had swapped some emails with town staff, and Trustee Miller and I have discussed it as well. I really think that we need to move forward soon and quickly with the curbside limb pickup that we budgeted for, and that's very much needed at this time. All you have to do is drive around town and look at the piles of dead limbs. And because we put it in the budget and because we've told people it's coming, it really needs to get done. And I would like to see it moved up the priority list before summer fire season gets here. That's one reason for doing it. And the other is just the unsightliness of piled up dead limbs all over town when we have people visiting from out of town. We're talking about how to get people to stop in lines and come back. Showing them a town full of dead limbs all over the streets, I don't think presents a very good image. And bottom line is, it's something the board deliberately budgeted for, and the town staff, in my opinion, needs to do what's needed, what needs to be done to get it carried out.
Would you like to say?
Brian Bear has indicated that he cannot do it in the near future, and but Dave Callion could do it June 27th and 28th if we're open to a different provider. He also has a bigger chipper. And if we feel that's enough time to do it, enough notice to the community. I think it was 27 and 28, June. So it'd be done before July.
So that's basically a little less than 2 weeks.
It's 10 days.
Yeah.
If we get it out tomorrow.
As long as it's publicized, and Brian's involvement was always, we consulted with him to get pricing, and so we could have a realistic number in the budget. When we never promised him that he was going to do it. I do think he probably could have been contacted earlier in the year before he got to his busy season, but
He was contacted April and May and June, and we would really prefer staff do that.
Yeah, and
because it messes
exactly,
up
that's a staff
communication.
choice as to who you use and
Okay.
time and how to publicize it and everything. It's just something that I really wanted to see done.
Trustee Miller?
Okay, we had the Housing and Human Services meeting on June 11th. And we talked about Warm Cookies of the Revolution, which is a civic engagement idea that Denver is doing, where they pick topics and they have warm cookies and projects at, parks, and engage different walks of life, kids, seniors, lots of different people, everybody, as many people as possible to get engaged in the community. Basically playing games or watching movies or, a whole slew of different, playing trivia, slew of different things. And I guess it was one man's brainchild, and it's gone fantastic. And there's a whole website about it that Amy has found, and it's super fun. The ideas that he's had, and so we were talking about possibly trying to do something like that in Sandstone Park during the music. Have a tent set up for one of the commissions one week, where you could have cookies and have somebody there from one of the commissions to talk about, and play game. I don't know. Just so if anybody has any great ideas, let us know.
Dunk the mayor in the water.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Dunk tank.
I'm in
I'm kidding.
pies, whatever.
We kind of thought that this summer might be a little soon to get it off the ground, but we're playing with the idea of getting something like that going because it sounds super fun. Let's see, transportation, of course, we talked about. We have the money that Toby had secured from Boulder County, and then there's apparently more money from Colorado State that we could potentially use. Apparently, Z-Trip is PUC. They are registered with PUC or regulated by PUC. So the woman who, what's her name? Angel Bond from Boulder County has already been using them, or has she been using them?
I think it was Longmont, City of Longmont.
Okay.
Pilot program, so they have some info.
Okay. To transport people using those funds. So we're getting closer to having some sort of transportation for people who don't, which is exciting. Let's see. Leaf is having a pancake breakfast on the 22nd at Walt Self, and with mimosas and not mimosas. No mimosas, sorry.
Somebody didn't file the right permit.
What is it? Oh, it is Lions Valley Village. Is it?
It is.
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was Wall South, sorry. Lions Valley Village. And they are having a pancake breakfast, and they have a big announcement, which I have no clue what it is. So if you guys can attend, please do, because I will be out of town. Let's see. Senior Center. What do we have for the Senior Center? My notes say Senior Center, but not much else. I think that's about it. We talked about Summit Housing. We just gave an update on Summit Housing, and yeah, got it. That's it.
Yep. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so how does a PCDC report follow cookies, Z-Trips, pancakes, and mimosas?
Be creative.
We'll try. Okay, PCDC had a workshop on the 10th and talked about makerspace zoning, which I think was started up with the notion of enabling some small scope manufacturing and that discussion was precipitated by Reeb, which moved in, and then first they moved in, and then they had a subsequent meeting with the town, and agreed to work cooperatively to make sure they have all of their requirements met between the town, the fire department, and Reeb. Reeb's very interested in being in Lyons, particularly so they can have bicycle demonstration rides using the trails and so forth around. And there is this notion that businesses should have some kind of a retail aspect to it, and they've talked about the possibility of things like T-shirts and caps and so forth. So that's an ongoing discussion. As was mentioned earlier, the vacant lot beside the Fork, the developer has apparently decided to sell that since they couldn't resolve the drainage issue. And the downtown design guidelines. Pardon?
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were going to cover
Well, it's actually already been covered. Apparently, there's some possibility of the Valley Bank building architect looking for a three-story structure, but the fire department has an issue with three-story buildings because they don't have equipment that can fight a fire in a three-story building. And it would take about $1 million new piece of equipment on the part of the fire department to do that. So that creates a big issue. There's a dispensary application still under review and discussion. That's the one I think that would be over near the distillery. But the ongoing discussion, then the makerspace discussion leads to discussions like incubator space and ideas for how to use unoccupied building inventory, which is, as we all know, is a very difficult issue that we're dealing with townwide right now. I also wanted to just mention that for the Lyons Urban Renewal Authority, the meetings that kicked off the Urban Renewal Authority negotiations with the other districts that are associated occurred last week, and that initiates a 120-day negotiation period. And then at the end of that, if it's not resolved, it goes to mediation. But the discussions, I thought, were all good discussions. The county was actually brought up the topic of affordable housing in their concept of sharing their TIF. No conclusions or anything, no hard stance, just they brought up that discussion. The fire department was thinking that there will be expenses associated with any additional development, and so they weren't as apparently motivated towards sharing the TIF, but still open for discussion, and some ideas were bandied about at that time. And the library was just mostly an introductory discussion, very pleasant, very cooperative moving forward. So.
Great. Well, thank you to the Mayor Pro Tem for going to the Lure meetings while I was out of town. I wasn't able to go. And that sounds like really good progress. That's a really big step with this plan, so that's great. I just wanted to say I'm going to be not Dr. Cogg, CML this week, so I think a couple of us, Trustee Farrell's going, and staff. So looking forward to that. Dr. Cogg will be canceled because it always conflicts with CML. So we're getting out of the Dr. Cog meeting for, for this month. I'm looking at the dates for getting the students together, and I'm going to send a poll around for July 16th and see if that night would work for them. So I just wanted to verify the room was available. I think last time I checked, the Tuesday after board meetings would probably be an okay night if it works for them. Okay, great. So I'll let you know and confirm if that night works for everybody. I also wanted to just, I had some conversations with actually a couple of the local kayakers recently and walked the holes with a couple of them. And they brought up some questions about, different kinds of kayakers, I guess, have different questions depending on what they do. But I guess the poles in the October hole had to be sent back, or we had to order new poles. We didn't have the correct ones or something. Do you know when they're going to be installed?
I was out there this week, and I was out there yesterday, and I thought they were up.
I don't think so.
It's still the wrong ones.
They're the wrong ones. So they're just concerned because the Olympics are in 2020, and they have people here who are training for potentially trying to qualify for the Olympics in 2020, and they can't train if they don't have the October hole. And so they're asking they've been very patient. We're almost 6 years into recovery, and they have not paddled in Lyons almost essentially regularly since the flood. And so they're really hoping that they can get that hole reestablished. They've got water now in different parts of the states, but they said, by later this summer, they're really going to be needing their training spot back. And then another person brought up the Black Bear hole and just said it doesn't really function the way it used to. And I don't know all the ins and outs of, how it was reconfigured, but it just made me think it was worth asking, is there anything that needs to be done? And if there is, can it be done? And what does that mean in terms of the contract and how it was designed? And, are there any solutions for that? Because I really do kind of miss the kayaking presence in town. I mean, I think there's some pretty impressive people who come here and live here, and there's a grassroots and there's small kind of group, but I think people do actually think it's a pretty cool aspect of Lyons, and I think they're trying to also be sensitive to Laverne Johnson Park has kind of become a different area and maybe a little less conducive to gates and things, and they're fine with moving the direction we've gone. But, it seems like we've kind of lost something in the way things have come back, I guess, in that regard. So.
Is it, because I know there's federal funds involved with both of those sections, is it okay to bring you an update July 1?
Yeah, I was just going to say, could you just maybe
Okay.
from a staff perspective, just bring kind of an
Okay.
assessment and an update
I
on
don't know
mostly Black Bear Hole and October Hole would be kind of the ask.
We'll
Okay.
bring an update.
I think that's it for me. Trustee Caravas.
Pro Tem Bryce sparked a memory of something I wanted to bring up during staff report, was ask. There was a fire call, I think Thursday evening, and they went to the wrong address. And as Barney brought up, that the fire department's a little reluctant to do some things just because of, equipment, this, that. I know we've had people on the fire department that have been there a really long time, but to confuse kind of the Pizza Bar area with Miami Corner kind of seems like a pretty big miss to me. So could you, I have no idea how to, could someone have
Sure, I
just see
can-
what happened?
I can inquire with the chief. I had not heard anything about it.
Yeah.
Had you heard anything, Deb?
I was walking the dog and they all got out and they said, oh, this isn't the address, we need to back up and go around the corner. It's like, okay, that's kind of, and it took a good 6-7 minutes for them to, so I don't know what happened at Miami, maybe someone knows, I don't know, but hopefully it wasn't anything serious that you miss.
I don't
Okay.
know, we will check into it.
I mean, it could have been a phone call, gave the wrong answer, that's very possible, but I just so we know.
Went to Pizza Bar, went to.
Well, I actually pulled a little ahead of the empty lot, basically. And the one truck was in front of the market.
Yeah.
They kind of straddled the street.
They went to the market, actually. They walked into the market to see if somebody was.
This was Thursday?
there. It was Thursday,
Wednesday or
Friday.
It wasn't Friday.
Then it was Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear about it from our staff. So.
The owner of my Yama works here, and he didn't say anything either, so we'll find out.
This may not be the reason, but having worked on this issue on the state legislation side, it could be an E911 issue where if you call on a cell phone, it registers a very inexact GPS location. And if people don't know the name of the place, they look at that GPS location, and that can be way off.
Well, yeah, that's very possible.
And we're working at the state right now, despite some cellular industry's best efforts to stop it, to try to refine that system. But I know it is an ongoing problem in a lot of places.
And that's fine with me, but if if they actually had the actual address and went to the wrong place, that's kind of a concern.
Yeah.
Well, the other issue too is that they rely on the assessor's office where the addresses are and update, and do things. And the assessor's office is so far.
Okay. Well, all right, did you want to run through any action items tonight?
You're gonna update on the October Hall and Black Bear Hall on July 1st.
And the fire call.
And the fire call. I'm gonna make sure that we have a Tuesday for July 16th for your students. And you're gonna check too, to make sure they're coming?
Yes, yeah.
We're gonna get busy on the lease with Paul Freisig, the letter for the quarry workers.
Somebody going to contact Anya?
So, contact Anya.
I already texted her.
Oh, okay.
She asked me to text her tonight, so I did. I texted her right afterwards.
I know from from my perspective, we need a resolution to approve Caleb as a board trustee.
Yeah.
I have to try to schedule July 15th workshop for the audit presentation. Count the number of businesses paying toward the BOD surcharge. Check in with CDOT regarding a workshop to better understand their corridor plans. Discuss the noise ordinance with Lions Den and the Boulder County Sheriff Office to make sure we're responding appropriately. Prepare a CDOT request for a speed study at McConnell, Stone Canyon, and then follow up on the two situations we discussed.
Did you have the letter
And
regarding
the
the quarry?
Quarry, that was on there,
I
yeah.
couldn't remember. Okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.